Chapter 12:15. As soon as the Sichuan emperor said this, eunuch Xiao's forehead broke out in a cold sweat. This was an important issue. How could a lowly servant like him casually comment on it? It was better to play it safe. Eunuch Xiao lowered his eyes and bowed. If your majesty doesn't understand, then this old servant is even more clueless. I just feel that Miss Chu is not inferior to those noble young ladies in terms of appearance or talent. The Sichuan emperor turned to look at the old man who had followed him for decades. He couldn't help but sneer. You sly servant. Every time I ask you something, you hesitate to answer. You don't want to offend anyone. How can you share my burdens like this? Eunuch Xiao bowed even lower and said fearfully, Your Majesty, this old servant's words carry little weight. I'm stupid and stupid. Now that I'm old, my brain is even worse. You can ask this servant to do manual labor in the future, but this old servant really can't help with important matters like this. Seeing that eunuch Xiao was frightened, the Sichuan emperor lost interest in asking further. He sighed softly. Time makes people grow old. I'm also old. In the future, I'll have to hand over the country to the next generation. Eunuch Xiao hurriedly said, Your Majesty is still so young. How can you be old? The world is at peace now because your Majesty has ruled the country well. The Sichuan emperor shook his head and laughed. You don't have the ability to do things, but your flattery skills are second to none. Eunuch Xiao smiled. Thank you for your praise, your Majesty. He really didn't know what to do with this old man. However, after the Sichuan emperor stopped smiling, his entire person became gloomy. The matter with Ranner could only be delayed for now. After opening his heart-to-heart with Ranner today, he realized that Ranner was too obsessed with Chu Qingyan, to the point that he was blinded. It was his wishful thinking that Ranner had no feelings for Chu Qingyan, but in reality, Suo was very satisfied with Chu Qingyan as his fiancée. If he forcefully separated the two of them, even if Xiao Su originally had no feelings for her, it would undoubtedly be a slap to his face if he publicly called off the engagement. Even if he did not like his son, Su, he still had to protect the face of the imperial family. Moreover, Su had already handed over his token at this time and planned to return to Lianqing and never return to the capital. For him, this was a great thing. He could legitimately make Ranner the crown prince, so he didn't want to cause any more trouble. But when he thought of Ranner's pleading eyes before he left, he suddenly hesitated. It was not impossible to betroth Chu Qingyan to his youngest son, but he needed some time to weigh the pros and cons. Thinking of this, the Sichuan emperor held his forehead with a headache. Qiao Ji, let's go back to the imperial study. Eunuch Qiao immediately followed. A few days later, Consort Yu knew that her son had revealed his feelings to His Majesty, but since His Majesty left the palace, he had no intention of mentioning this matter at all. She was very anxious. Ranner's condition had improved a lot in the past 2 days, but his mood was still very low. He was sick all day and was completely dispirited. He was not as motivated as before, so she felt that she should do something. On this day, Dong Ting Fan appeared in the Moon Palace. You sent me several letters in succession. Is there something urgent? Dong Ting Fan was still dressed in a black robe and a black hat tightly covered his face. Only 2 eyes were exposed, making him look very gloomy. Consort Yu was very surprised to see him suddenly appear. She didn't hide anything and told him about Ranner's feelings for Chu Qingyan, then asked him what he thought. Dong Ting Fan frowned when he heard this. Now is the critical time to appoint the crown prince. His Highness is sick and troubled by love. If this news spreads, it will affect the neutral minister's evaluation of him. Consort Yu said worriedly, This is also what I'm worried about. I originally thought that I could borrow His Majesty's hand to break the engagement between Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan, then provoke Xiao Su to resist and oppose His Majesty. When the time comes, we can simply frame him with a crime, then he won't have a chance to turn things around. Your plan is feasible. Xiao Su is a sleeping lion. In the past, he resigned himself to adversity only because it didn't touch his bottom line. Now that this is a matter of face, if he resists, it's not impossible to accuse him of treason. But the key is, will His Majesty do this? After Dong Ting Fan finished his analysis, he raised the most important question. Consort Yu heard this and slammed the table hatefully. Until now, there hasn't been any news from His Majesty in the past 2 days. Recently, he's been sleeping in his own palace. Perhaps he's afraid that I'll ask about it, so he's avoiding me. Since His Majesty is unreliable, do you have other plans by calling me here? Dong Ting Fan went straight to the point. He didn't like to hear her talk about her relationship with the Sichuan emperor. Consort Yu couldn't help but say, "Senior brother, you know me best. I do have an idea, and I hope you can help me." "Just say it." Dong Ting Fan wasn't surprised. "Just now, you said that it's a sensitive period for the selection of the crown prince. Ranner can't afford to make any mistakes. Therefore, Chu Qingyan is an uncertain factor that will affect his future. So, I want you to secretly get rid of her so that Ranner won't have any thoughts about her. Without destruction, there can be no construction. Perhaps Ranner will suffer for a while, but it won't last forever. Only when Chu Qingyan is dead can he be at ease and marry Jing Mingzhu and focus on preparing to become the crown prince." Consort Yu had a vicious heart. Everything was in the way of her son and her family's bright future. She wanted to uproot everything and not allow any accidents to happen. Dong Ting Fan didn't agree or disagree with her suggestion. "Don't you have a son who's very skilled in martial arts? Sending him to kill Chu Qingyan should be more than enough." Consort Yu's eyes lit up as she suggested. Dong Ting Fan remembered that he had just injured his son a few days ago. It wasn't appropriate to send him out now, so he thought of someone. "More than 10 years ago, I planted a pawn by Xiao Su's side. Now, it's time for him to be put to good use." Consort Yu also remembered that she had once suggested to him that he should send someone to hide by Xiao Su's side so that they could be put to good use in the future. However, so many years had passed that she had already forgotten about it. Now that he mentioned it, she vaguely remembered. Will that work? Consort Yu was a little worried. Dong Ting Fan chuckled softly. "I'm afraid that no one would expect this person to be from the Moon Palace. He's also deeply trusted by the King of England, so this person is the most suitable." With his words, Consort Yu was relieved. "All right, I'll leave this matter to you." Dong Ting Fan nodded. Inside the King of England's residence, Huang Yi was inspecting the newly purchased steamer basket. Because Grandmaster Chu had been craving buns recently, the steamer basket in the kitchen had been left unused for too long and was spoiled, so she had specially asked someone to buy another one. After opening the steamer basket, she suddenly found a bamboo tube that was as wide as a finger. She picked it up and saw a piece of paper inside. She paused for a moment, then took it out and unfolded it to read. "Kill Chu Qingyan." The signature below was the Moon Palace's unique insignia. Chapter 12:16. Ever since he had been in contact with Pang Jijing for the past 2 days, Xiao had gradually gotten used to this little rascal circling around him. Because of her arrival, his peaceful life had slowly become a pool of water. However, he didn't hate this kind of life. On the contrary, he found it more enjoyable. It was like adding a few more drops of paint to the plain water. It was pleasing to the eye. One day, Xiao took her out to buy clothes. "Xiao, are you too idle these days? Or did you succeed in scheming against someone? Is that why you have the mood to stroll around?" Because he forced her to wear a veil hat, she couldn't see the road clearly. Pang Jijing was full of anger. She walked beside him and spared no effort in mocking him. Xiao knew she was dissatisfied, so he didn't want to argue with her. He didn't want her to be more aggressive. Unfortunately, he had underestimated her ability to fight for a long time. His refusal to accept the challenge had ignited her fighting spirit. "Xiao, are you mute today? And why didn't you bring any guards today? And why didn't you let Lu come out with me? Are you going to help me carry the things I buy later?" Her voice turned shy. "I'll be embarrassed if I let the great Prince Yi be my porter." Then she turned into a roar. "I'm warning you, Xiao, if you keep pretending to be a mute, I'll... Watch out." Xiao suddenly reached out and pulled her to him. Before she could react, she threw herself at him and bumped into him. Fortunately, Xiao reached out to hold her. Otherwise, she would have been embarrassed in public. And at this time, a speeding carriage ran past the place where she was standing. Pang Jijing was still in shock as she looked at the roaring carriage. She couldn't help but widen her eyes. She had almost seen the king of hell. At this moment, Xiao Ho pulled her out of his arms. His expression was very ugly. How can you bump into someone's carriage when you're just walking? Pang Jijing, good for you. Pang Jijing knew she was in the wrong. Plus, she hadn't calmed down yet. She lowered her head and looked like she was wronged but didn't dare to resist. Xiao Ho originally wanted to say a few more words to teach her a lesson, but seeing her like this, he didn't want to. Moreover, at this time, the people around them were pointing at them. His face darkened, and he pulled her forward. Pang Jijing also felt the children next to her were laughing at her for not looking where she was walking. It was too embarrassing to stay here for long. At this moment, she trotted after Xiao Ho pulled her away. Are you still not going to focus on walking in the future? Xiao Ho threatened her as he walked. Pang Jijing didn't dare to refute. Will you still argue with me in the future? She continued shaking her head. Will you be willful and making trouble in the future? She shook her head. Good girl. The corners of Pang Jijing's mouth twitched. Why did it feel like he was walking a cat? Was it her thought? However, she didn't know what kind of festival it was today, but there were a lot of people coming and going. Fortunately, Xiao Ho was holding her wrist tightly. Otherwise, based on the density of the crowd, they would have been separated at any moment. The skin under his palm was delicate and soft. Her wrist was so slender that it seemed like it would break if he used any force. When they reached an empty place, Xiao Ho let go of her hand. He put his hands behind his back and opened them quietly. He didn't know why, but his palms were sweating and his heart was beating faster. He couldn't help but wonder if he had been lacking exercise recently. Pang Jijing, who breathed in the fresh air, relaxed. She turned around and saw Xiao Ho whose ears were red. She wondered if he was too hot. No wonder his palms were so hot just now. Thinking about how the two of them had been quietly holding hands, she couldn't help but feel her body heat up. So the two of them stood side by side uncomfortably, pretending to be admiring the scenery. But there was really nothing to see here. Pang Jijing fanned herself with her sleeve, then turned around and asked, "Where are we going later?" "No destination." "What? Did you call me out just to wander around?" Pang Jijing couldn't help but raise her voice. Xiao Ho expressed his helplessness at her suddenly raising her voice. He turned and glanced at her. "Then where do you want to go?" He had wanted to bring her out to buy clothes, but now that he thought about it, he could make it the next time they came out. He didn't have to buy anything today. If Pang Jijing knew that he was so willful, she would probably bleed. Pang Jijing took a deep breath and told herself to calm down and not to argue with him. He was just a rich kid who didn't know anything. She should be magnanimous and let him off. She thought about it seriously and suddenly had a flash of inspiration. "Do you still remember the fruit wine we drank last time? I want to try it now." Ever since she drank that taste, she couldn't forget it because it felt like a modern cocktail. It made her feel a little nostalgic. Xiao Ho frowned slightly and seemed to be hesitating. "Are you sure you want to drink it now?" "Yes, yes and yes." She nodded heavily. Seeing him in a difficult position, she was especially happy. The feeling of going against him was simply too great. Xiao Ho thought that she had been frightened by the carriage just now and drinking some wine could calm her down. He threw away the hesitation in his heart and turned around to leave. Hey, where are you going?" He really turned around and left without saying a word. Xiao Ho stopped and looked back at her. His tone carried a bit of disdain. "Didn't you want to drink? What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and follow me." After saying that, he continued to turn around and walk away. Pang Jijing's heart was happy and she immediately followed him eagerly. In the end, after many turns, they were far away from the bustling city. They entered an alley and exited an alley. It was almost dizzying for her. They walked from evening to night and just when she couldn't walk anymore, the two of them stopped in front of a small rundown house in the innermost part of the alley. Pang Jijing was puzzled as she looked at the place. It was really down and out. If Xiao Ho hadn't brought her here, she wouldn't have been able to find this place. The surroundings were dark and only the lanterns on both sides of the door were lit. It was a pity that the lanterns had faded over the years, but the lights still gave people a warm illusion. But after Pang Zhijing took a good look at the surroundings, she suddenly jumped away and pointed at the person beside her. "Xiao Ho, are you planning something bad? Let me tell you, I'm not stupid. I won't help you count the money after being sold." Xiao Ho had been silent since they arrived here. When he heard her question, he looked at her in annoyance. "You're so stupid that you need me to do it personally?" With her intelligence being doubted, Pang Zhijing glared at him angrily. Xiao Ho didn't continue to pester her and said to her, "Go knock on the door." "Why should I go knock? Why don't you go?" she said unhappily. Xiao Ho glanced at her and she subconsciously shrunk her neck. "I'll knock then." Chapter 12:17. Pang Zhijing walked forward and timidly knocked on the door. As soon as she knocked, the door shook. She thought that the door was not solid and would fall down with a knock, so she immediately ran back to Xiao Ho's side to hide. During this time, she saw the ridicule in Xiao Ho's eyes. She bared her teeth at him. In any case, even if he laughed at her for being timid, she would not knock on the door again. If it was smashed, who would she cry to? However, at this time, the mottled wooden door shook and then with a creaking sound, it slowly opened from the inside. This atmosphere, this sound, this environment, why did it feel like a haunted house? Don't be fooled by her usual courage, her heart was very fragile. At this time, she was tightly holding onto Xiao Ho's sleeve, ready to pull him away at any time. Xiao Ho saw that she was scared to this extent and did not feel sympathy. Instead, he felt it was funny. At the same time, the wooden door had been laboriously opened and a head poked out from inside. It was an old woman with a face full of wrinkles. The hand on the door handle was also frighteningly old. She looked at the two of them with vigilance, but when she saw Xiao Ho, she was slightly surprised and impatiently walked out. "Your Highness, why are you here?" After asking, she looked at Pang Zhijing, who was tightly clinging to Xiao Ho. Her eyes revealed a puzzled and pleasantly surprised expression. "And this is?" "Granny Ren, let's go in first." Xiao Ho interrupted her action of constantly looking at Pang Zhijing and then took the lead to walk in. Pang Zhijing felt that this person was a bit eccentric at first glance, but listening to her words and actions, she was very well behaved. Her voice was also gentle, unlike her appearance that gave people the feeling of an evil mother-in-law. Xiao Ho walked first, but she was still a bit scared. She pulled on his sleeve and followed closely, like a child afraid of being lost. Xiao Ho lowered his head to look at her tightly clinging hand and slightly hooked his lips into a smile. A flirtatious look flashed across his eyes and then disappeared. Pang Zhijing's whole body was in a state of alert, but she felt that Xiao Ho seemed to be very familiar with this place. From the moment he entered until now, he did not hesitate to walk inside and would also remind her to be careful of the potholes under her feet. Because of this, she slowly relaxed and had the energy to observe her surroundings. Although the outside looked very dilapidated, the inside was very clean and tidy, so there weren't many utensils. However, it could be seen that the owner was very good at decorating. There were many small wine jugs, small flowers, and all kinds of small trinkets. She was dazzled by the sight. If it weren't for Xiao Ho taking care of her, she was afraid that she would have tripped again because she didn't pay attention to the road. But what made her feel a little strange was that the person called Granny Ren, from the moment she entered the door until now, she had been staring at her, especially her hand that was pulling on Xiao Ho's sleeve. She subconsciously pulled the sleeve even tighter. However, she discovered that the eyes of the person called Granny Ren were becoming brighter and brighter, as if they were equipped with light bulbs. Her heart became even more flustered. No way, did she really come to the thieves' lair? "What's wrong?" Xiao Ho asked. "Granny Ren is so fierce," she whispered. "Don't talk nonsense." Xiao Ho glared at her. "Sob, sob, sob, you're so fierce." Xiao Ho pulled open the floral curtain with great familiarity and walked in. There was an oil lamp inside, so it was brighter than outside. Xiao Ho pulled his sleeve out of her hand and said in a bad mood, "Didn't you say you wanted to drink wine? I brought you here, but you look like I'm going to sell you. What are you thinking in your head?" Pang Zhijing pouted and turned her eyes to the side. He lectured her in front of someone she didn't know and didn't give her any face at all. She had a small temper. How could Xiao Ho not see what she was thinking? He pointed at Granny Ren and said to her, "Granny Ren isn't an outsider. The wine you drank before was brewed by her." Pang Jijing was surprised. She turned her head and looked at Granny Ren with curiosity. She always felt that people who knew how to brew wine were very powerful because she had a relative who knew how to brew wine. She had been influenced by him since she was young, so she more or less knew about wine. When Pang Jijing looked at Granny Ren was also looking at her. When His Highness asked her to let go, although his tone was a bit bad, she could see that His Highness cared about this girl very much. Otherwise, he wouldn't have waited until they entered the door. She smiled kindly and said, "This girl doesn't need to be afraid. This old woman makes wine for a living. Usually, not many people come here, so it's a bit desolate. Please don't mind." Pang Jijing finally understood what it meant to not judge a book by its cover. This Granny Ren was really kind and amiable. She wasn't fierce at all. On the contrary, the person sitting next to her was fierce. "You haven't eaten dinner yet, right? If you don't mind, you can eat here." Granny Ren's tone was very polite and could be said to be cautious. Pang Jijing was not used to it. She turned her head and asked Xiao Ho with her gaze. Xiao Ho ignored her. She didn't know when he took the jade pendant from his waist and was playing with it. She had no choice. The other party was still waiting for a reply, so she immediately turned her head to Granny Ren and said obediently, "We walked all the way here and haven't eaten yet. If we don't cause trouble for you, there's no need. We can go out and find a place to eat." When Granny Ren heard this, she quickly waved her hand. "It's no trouble, no trouble. Wait a moment, this old woman will be done soon." As she spoke, she quickly went into the kitchen, afraid that the two would go back on their words. Pang Jijing looked in the direction Granny Ren left and couldn't help but blink. "What's going on?" She stretched out her elbow and poked the person next to her. "What's your relationship with this person? Why do I feel like she's afraid of you?" "This isn't called being afraid. If you don't know how to use words, don't use them," Xiao Ho said coldly. After being choked by him, Pang Jijing turned her head and didn't want to pay attention to him. This was too much. He didn't even give her any face outside. Xiao Ho saw that she only left the back of her head to him and couldn't help but smile. Recently, he seemed to have spoiled her to the point of spoiling the roof. Granny Ren was my mother's wet nurse when she was still a young miss of an official's family. While she was sulking, she suddenly heard him explain himself. She forgot that she was still angry and turned her head to ask in surprise, "Wasn't your mother's entire family raided back then?" At that time, Granny Ren happened to have something to do back home. Moreover, my mother had returned the indenture contract to her a long time ago, so Granny Ren wasn't affected when her family was raided. Xiao Ho replied calmly. Pang Jijing pursed her lips. "Then why is she here?" Xiao Ho lowered his eyes. With his back to the firelight, his expression couldn't be seen clearly. "Granny Ren used to dote on my mother very much. My mother's family encountered an unforeseen event. When she found out that my mother had entered the palace, she found a place here to accompany her. Granny Ren made a living by brewing wine. Later, after my mother was promoted to noble lady, she got in touch with Granny Ren and the two of them started to interact. Granny Ren really is a good person." Pang Jijing sighed. However, when she spoke, she saw that there seemed to be a flash of sadness in his eyes and couldn't help but be stunned. Chapter 12:18. When Pang Jijing tried her best to blink and look again, she couldn't see the emotions in his eyes. There was only calmness. Xiao Ho continued, "Mother liked to drink Renpo's wine from a young age. Renpo mainly made wine for my mother to send into the palace. At that time, your mother suffered so much. She must be happy to be able to reunite with her wet nurse," Pang Jijing said softly. "Yes." Xiao Ho's voice suddenly became low. It was a pity that mother's status was too low back then. Wine was rarely sent to her. At that time, fruit wine became my mother's only pastime. She usually drank it sparingly. Sometimes, she would take it out to smell the fragrance of the wine. Pang Jijing was stunned. If noble Lady Luo's life back then was so difficult, It could be imagined what his childhood was like. It was fortunate that he was able to grow up. She suddenly understood why he had become like this. It was all forced by the circumstances back then. After Xiao Ho finished speaking, he suddenly realized that he had unknowingly said the words buried in his heart. In all these years, this was the first time he had told someone about his mother's past. Ever since his mother had passed away, anything related to her had become a taboo in his memory. He would not easily mention it. Perhaps it was because today, smelling the familiar wine fragrance in the air, he had forgotten himself. He raised his head and happened to meet her eyes that were filled with indescribable heartache. His heart paused slightly as if he was surprised. However, he suddenly laughed. "What's with that look? Are you pitying me?" "I'm not." Pang Zhijing immediately shook her head. She wondered if she had been too obvious and hurt his self-esteem. Children who grew up in that kind of environment were usually very sensitive. At this time, the door creaked as if someone was pushing in from outside. Pang Zhijing jumped in fright and immediately moved to his side. "Someone's coming in?" Xiao Ho was very calm. "Maybe Uncle Wang is back. We sold quite a few sugar figurines today. Business is much better than a few days ago." An old voice came from afar. Heavy footsteps could be heard, as if he was carrying heavy weights. It was a little strenuous, but it couldn't hide the cheerful tone and the humming of a song. Something was put down heavily, and then the sound of footsteps approached. "Old woman, tonight?" Before she could finish her words, the old man entered the room and saw Xiao Ho. He was instantly delighted. "Your Highness, you're here." Xiao Ho's face immediately turned cold. "Uncle Wang, why are you back so late again? Didn't I tell you that I will give you enough money to live on so that you don't have to go out and suffer?" It was Pang Zhijing's first time seeing Xiao Ho caring for others. It didn't seem out of place at all. Instead, it felt cute and real. Uncle Wang chuckled and patted his shoulders. "We don't need much money to live. Running a small business can also exercise our bodies. Didn't you see? This old man's body has become much healthier." Xiao Ho had no choice but to give up. Uncle Wang glanced at the table, then turned and walked into another room. "Wait here, I'll get you some wine. It's rare for us to come here today, so let's get drunk." Hearing the noise, Grandma Wang came out and said to everyone, "Wait a moment, the dishes will be served soon. Let this old man drink with you later." Grandma Wang immediately went back in after speaking. Uncle Wang took out the wine pot and placed it on the table. Just as he was about to say something, he looked up and saw Pang Zhijing sitting quietly beside Xiao Ho. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes to take a closer look. Where did this little girl come from? Pang Zhijing immediately shrank to Xiao Ho's side. Where did this old man come from? Xiao Ho patted the back of her hand and comforted her. "Don't be afraid, this is Grandma Wang's husband. He used to be a steward in my mother's residence." He then said to Uncle Wang, "This is Pang Zhijing. You can call her Zhijing." "Hello, Uncle Wang." The people here were his few remaining family members. Pang Zhijing's fear was swept away and she greeted them sweetly. Good. This little girl is so pretty. Your Highness is so lucky. Come, try this old woman's new hong." Uncle Wang poured wine for the two of them. Xiao Ho took her cup and said, "Uncle Wang, get her some fruit wine." Uncle Wang slapped his forehead. "Right, I forgot. Fruit wine is more suitable for women. This old man will get it for you." At this moment, Grandma Wang came out with the dishes. Pang Zhijing looked at the simple dishes on the table. They were either stir-fried vegetables or braised tofu. There was no oil at all. She wasn't picky about food, but she didn't know if Xiao Ho would be able to get used to it. However, it turned out that she was thinking too much. Xiao Ho naturally picked up the food and ate it without any hesitation. As they spoke, the room became very lively. There was the smell of fireworks. At the table, Uncle Wang and Grandma Wang kept putting food on his plate. Even though he was a clean freak, he didn't mind at all. He didn't refuse any of them. Pang Zhijing thought it was very strange, but she could only keep these questions to herself. She would ask him about it when she had the chance. However, the fruit wine was really delicious. Her attention was drawn to it. This fruit wine is slightly sour and bitter. I didn't expect Miss Zhijing to like it. Perhaps because she was more familiar with it, Grandma Wang was not as reserved as she was at the beginning. Pang Zhijing drank a few cups of wine and relaxed. She smiled and said, I liked to eat sweet and sour things when I was young, so this wine is to my taste. His Highness said just now that he brought you here to get the wine. When it's time to leave, this old woman will pick a few bottles for you to take with you. Grandma Wang said with a smile. Then I'll have to trouble you. Pang Zhijing quickly thanked her. Grandma Wang waved her hand and didn't mind at all. You're welcome. This old woman brewed this wine for herself. His Highness doesn't like it either. Is that so? Pang Zhijing subconsciously looked at the person who was drinking with Uncle Wang. She clearly saw him drinking a lot in front of the grave. At this moment, Grandma Wang explained, His Highness doesn't like the taste, but every year on the anniversary of Miss Death, he would drink a few cups with Mississippi. For the rest of the time, he basically doesn't touch it. Pang Zhijing finally understood. So that's why. At this moment, a strong wind blew outside, as if it was going to rain again. Old man, don't drink anymore. Come with me to clean up those salted vegetables. I forgot to bring them in today. Grandma Wang immediately called Uncle Wang out. Uncle Wang immediately put down his wine cup and followed her out. Only the two of them were left in the room. Pang Zhijing was drinking to her heart's content when Xiao Ho's faint voice rang in her ears. Do you know who Southern Blue sent this gift? Pang Zhijing blinked. How could she know? Xiao Ho didn't wait for her to answer. He said directly, Yu Qingxi. This name sounded familiar. Xiao Ho explained, the only son of the Prime Minister whom you had an affair with. Chapter 12:19. What the hell? Unfulfilled love? Pang Zhijing swallowed her saliva. Could it be the first person that popped into her mind? Xiao Ho saw that she didn't say anything and felt a little uncomfortable. Didn't you chase after him and insist on marrying him? Why, have you forgotten now? How could I forget? I won't forget even if I die. Pang Zhijing gritted her teeth. If it weren't for the insidious and petty Yu Qingxi, would she have fallen to this point? At that time, in order to avoid the assassins he sent, she could only ride in the same car as Xiao Ho. Every day, she had to endure his sarcasm and worry about whether the assassins would come after them. Every day felt like a year. Those days were the most unforgettable dark days of her life. Xiao Ho misunderstood her meaning and thought that she still had feelings for Yu Qingxi. His face instantly darkened. You really are hopelessly stupid. His tone was so harsh that it shocked her. She came back to her senses and wanted to refute him. How was she hopelessly stupid? At this time, Grandma Wang and Uncle Wang had finished collecting the food and came back. The two of them swept the dust off their bodies and smiled. Sorry to keep you waiting. Let's continue eating and drinking. Thus, Uncle Wang and Xiao Ho, Grandma Wang and Pang Zhijing chatted in pairs. During this time, Pang Zhijing and Xiao Ho ignored each other. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the two of them were at loggerheads. After a while, Grandma Wang and Pang Zhijing were full. Only the two men were still drinking and chatting. Grandma Wang called Pang Zhijing into the kitchen with the excuse that she needed help. Grandma Wang, is there anything I can help with? Pang Zhijing rolled up her sleeves as soon as she came in. She was very down-to-earth and prepared to help. Grandma Wang saw that she was so cooperative and couldn't help but smile. There was more sincerity in her eyes. Miss Zhijing, you can just stand by and chat with me. It's too dark in here. You're not familiar with it and can't see. Hearing this, she looked around. Indeed, she couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Then you go ahead. I'll chat with you. Seeing her being so honest, Grandma Wang was even more satisfied. She reached out and pulled her to the table to sit down. Granny Wang rubbed her hands together and said with some embarrassment and hesitation, Miss Zhijing, please don't blame me for being rude. Can you tell me which family you are from, or where you live? Was this a background check? Pang Zhijing thought for a moment and felt that she was just curious. She smiled and said, I'm from the Southern Blue Continent. I'm not from your country. Old Lady Wang nodded. Then, she said embarrassedly, can I call you Zhijing? Sure, no problem. Wang Po was not easy to be shy, so Pang Jijing had a good impression of her. She smiled and agreed. Okay, then Jijing, what do you think of His Highness? Granny Wang went straight to the point and asked in a serious tone. Pang Jijing didn't expect her to ask this. Although she was a little surprised, she thought about how close Granny Wang was to Xiao. It was normal for her to ask about him, so she thought about it seriously before replying. To be honest, when I first met him, I thought he was as gentle as jade and was a gentleman. But after interacting with him for a while, I realized that he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He bullied people without any discussion. Also, his temper is weird. He's evil to the core and doesn't know how to take care of women. Pang Jijing rested for a moment after saying a lot of bad things about him. Suddenly, she felt that it wasn't good to say these things in front of someone close to him. She looked up and saw Granny Wang waiting for her to continue. She couldn't help but stick out her tongue and continue. However, after getting along with him for a long time, I realized that he wasn't living a happy life. He didn't have any friends, relatives, or lovers by his side. He lived alone. He liked to scheme and tease people, but he had his own reasons. After saying the first part, she realized that she still had a lot of thoughts about him in her heart. He was a filial person. Every year on the anniversary of his mother's death, rain or shine, he would go and accompany his mother. He never told anyone about the pain in his heart. He silently endured the separation of life and death, the joys and sorrows of life. Sometimes, when I saw him wearing a mask and pretending to be the sickly Prince Yi, I felt sorry for him. But I couldn't help him. Maybe he didn't need my help. In the end, she felt that she was useless. She couldn't help at all. As expected, she could only stay away from him and be an idle worm. When she lowered her head and complained, a gentle hand was placed on her shoulder. She looked up and met Granny Wang's gentle and kind eyes. Jijing, it's not like that. Granny Wang withdrew her hand and said slowly, from the first time I saw you, I felt that you had a special place in His Highness' heart. Every time he came, he was alone, not to mention bringing a girl. And along the way, he was very accommodating to you. He was worried that you would fall and would tell you how to avoid the potholes. Even at the dinner table, his eyes never left you. This is the first time I've seen His Highness like this. Pang Jijing listened to her and felt that she didn't feel that Xiao Ho was special to her at all. But Granny Wang spoke so sincerely that she couldn't help but think back. Along the way, other than his poisonous tongue, he really didn't treat her badly. Granny Wang saw that she was lost in thought. She smiled and looked at her for a while before talking to her about Xiao Ho's past. Actually, His Highness did have a hard time for so many years, especially the year when Miss passed away. Granny Wang was lost in her memories. In that cannibalistic palace, it was already not easy for Miss to survive as the daughter of a guilty official. She also had to take care of a child. That was one disaster after another. That year, when I saw Miss, who was as thin as a stick, my heart ached. But Miss left in a hurry after giving me some instructions. She said that she might not live past this winter. She hoped that if there was a chance in the future, you could help her take care of His Highness. She was worried that something would happen to him when she wasn't around. But since that time, I haven't seen Miss and His Highness again. It wasn't until 8 years ago that I saw a child who was more beautiful than a fairy holding a stove on a hot day and standing in front of the door in a coat. I thought I saw Miss, who was still carefree in the manner. Later, I found out that he was Mrs. Child. At that time, his body was very weak. Although he has recovered now, at that time, he couldn't leave his cotton-padded jacket even in the summer. Later, I found out that in the winter when Miss passed away, His Highness had no one to take care of him in the cold palace. He was cold for the entire winter and finally froze to death. Pang Jijing's eyes couldn't help but redden. She felt so sour that she wanted to cry. Chapter 12:20. It turned out that despite his strong appearance, he still had to endure the pain of losing his mother when he was young. He also had to accept the loneliness and sorrow of being abandoned by the entire world. It was hard for her to imagine how a 6-year-old child, in an empty palace without any heating, could survive that winter day. Just how strong was his willpower to support his young heart? At this time, Wang Pe choked and sighed deeply. Her voice still contained the disbelief of the past. Do you know what His Highness said to me when he stood at the door with a little childishness on his face? He smiled and said, Wang Pe, please live well, live until the day I take revenge with my own hands. 8 years ago? Wasn't Xiao Ho also in his teens? Pang Jijing was stunned for a moment. Could it be that people who had experienced great changes would be reborn and mature early? Was that why he was like this now? Wang Pe shook her head and said sadly, Jijing, can you imagine? His Highness was so beautiful that people couldn't take their eyes off him, but he smiled and said that he would take revenge. At that time my heart ached. How did His Highness survive those years? And since I met His Highness, I have never seen him shed a single tear. When he was sad, he smiled more happily than anyone, but in fact, his heart was more painful and lonely than anyone else. She was silent. She recalled the days they had spent together. She had indeed rarely seen him laugh out loud, nor had she seen him genuinely happy. All this time, he had been using a gentle smile to hide his true emotions. Wasn't it tiring to live with a mask on? The hatred of his mother's death was irreconcilable. It was hard to imagine that at such a young age, he had made up his mind to take revenge and persevered for 8 years. What kind of strong willpower supported him? Fortunately, his willpower was strong. If it were someone else, they would have been driven crazy long ago. She suddenly remembered that at that time, she had mistakenly given him an aphrodisiac as an anesthetic, but he was actually fine. He had once mocked himself and said, Do you think that if you want to survive in the palace, you can survive until now without the ability to protect yourself? I have been testing drugs since I was young. I dare not say that I can deal with all the anesthetics and aphrodisiacs in the world, but in my eyes, those drugs on the market are not enough. Those words that he had said but she had never paid attention to suddenly appeared in her mind. It turned out that he had suffered so much in order to survive. Yet she kept criticizing him for his shady methods and for being cunning and taking advantage of loopholes. In fact, at that time and in that place, if he hadn't been ruthless to himself and others, he wouldn't have been able to survive until now. Then who poisoned Luo Gurn back then? Who is he looking for to take revenge on? She finally thought of the most important question and hurriedly asked Wang Pe. It's Empress Liang. Wang Pe, who had always been gentle and kind, showed a hint of hatred on her face. Empress Liang? Isn't that the mother of the King of England, Xiao Su? Pang Jijing was stunned. Empress Liang is very jealous. Any woman who is close to His Majesty, as long as they are not formally brought in from outside, will use methods to eradicate them. That year, because my young lady gave birth to His Highness, she got rid of her identity as a palace maid, but she was still guilty. At that time, His Majesty didn't pay much attention to the mother and son, which gave Empress Liang the opportunity. My young lady's health has not been very good since she entered the palace. She had people poison my young lady's medicine. My young lady's body accumulated little by little without her knowledge until finally, there was no cure. When Wang Pe said these words, her face showed a painful and mournful expression, and she silently shed tears. After so many years, every time she mentioned it, she felt so sad that she wanted to cry. Pang Jijing finally understood why Xiao Ho was targeting the King of England. She also finally understood why his eyes were so strange every time the King of England was mentioned. It turned out that the son paid for the mother's debt. Then everything made sense. He was targeting the King of England to take revenge on Empress Liang. Hit the snake where it hurts. Empress Liang wholeheartedly wanted to support her son to be the crown prince, so she started with Xiao Su. She attacked him, stopped him, schemed against him, and finally destroyed him. The smartest and most satisfying way to take revenge on someone was not to kill them, but to slowly torture them. Therefore, at this moment, Xiao Ho planned to use a blunt knife to hang on the neck of his enemy and slowly grind it. Although it was cruel, it was not enough to offset the hatred of killing his mother. Perhaps seeing that Pang Jijing was frightened by her words, Wang Pe immediately wiped her tears and held her hand. Jijing, don't take this old woman's words to heart, and don't be afraid. His Highness is a very good person. You must not be afraid of him because of what this old woman said. What kind of person was Pang Jijing? She had almost died in his hands. She had experienced such a dangerous thing, so these things were not scary in her eyes. They would only make her look at him in a new light and feel more sorry for him. Wang Pe, don't worry. I won't. She shook her head sincerely. Wang Pe sighed in relief. She patted her hand lightly, and suddenly her tone changed. She asked with a smile, then Jijing, tell this old woman the truth. Do you like His Highness? She had not pulled herself out of her sad mood, but Wang Po's words scared her so much that her heart was about to fly. Why do you ask? She accidentally stuttered. Wang Po smiled lovingly. Because although this old woman is old and can't see clearly, my heart is not blind. I can see that His Highness likes you very much, but I don't know what you think? Not blind? She could see that Xiao Ho liked her? How could she, who was not blind, not see it? She felt that Wang Po might not understand Xiao Ho very well. Actually, he did not like her, but when he was bored on the road to revenge, he met her, this doll that he was interested in, and teased her a few times. When she got tired of him, she would kick him away and leave without looking back. While Pang Jijing was distracted, Wang Po suddenly sighed. This old woman knew that to outsiders, His Highness is sick and looks like he won't live for long. On the surface, he looks gentle, but people can't feel his sincerity. After so many years, he has been all alone. It's normal that you don't like him. Wang Po's words made her scalp tighten. She could not stand the elderly being sad. In a moment of hot-headedness, she blurted out her secret. Wang Po, you misunderstood. I like him very much, really. In order to prevent her from not believing, Pang Jijing even used a very standard swearing posture, solemnly pledging. As soon as her voice fell, Wang Po, who was still frowning, suddenly smiled like a flower. That's good, that's good. Pang Jijing felt like she had been tricked, but there was nothing she could do. Later, she found out that she had confessed so many times, but it was not to him. He was clearly the one she liked, but until she left, she had never personally said that she liked him. Chapter 12:21. Just as Pang Jijing was regretting her outspokenness, old Lady Wang's voice sounded again with a pleading expression. Jijing, can I ask you for a favor? Pang Jijing was stunned. What is it? If I can do it, I will definitely not refuse. Old Lady Wang smiled. You can do it. Hearing this, she couldn't help but be curious about what it was. Old Lady Wang said earnestly, Jijing, I want to ask you to accompany His Highness more in the future. Don't leave him because His Highness is too lonely. I also have one foot in the coffin and don't have many days left to live. I don't want to be unable to rest in peace before I die. If I can't see His Highness living a happy life, I won't dare to go down to see Miss Luo. Pang Jijing didn't expect this to be her request. She and Aunt Luo were really master and servant. What they said was exactly the same. She really wanted to tell old Lady Wang that Miss Luo had already reincarnated and wouldn't be able to see her. But she knew that this was old Lady Wang's wish. She couldn't cruelly break it, so she just pretended that she didn't know. Pang Jijing felt that this was too difficult and couldn't help but say, Old Lady Wang, it's not that I don't want to agree, but I can be quite unreasonable sometimes. Even Xiao Ho was annoyed by me. He will definitely dislike me in the future. So I think you should change your request. Maybe I can help. Old Lady Wang shook her head and a smile slowly appeared on her face. Jijing, Old Lady Wang is not so old that she can't see anything. Although His Highness only comes to visit us occasionally, Old Lady Wang is very good at reading people. If His Highness didn't care about you, he wouldn't have brought you here. Because here he can be his truest self and not worry about being discovered by those bad people. However, he can't hide his past from you. After hearing this, Pang Jijing was confused. Was it really like what Old Lady Wang said? Wang Po saw that she was absent-minded because of her words, and immediately continued, You are the only one who can get close to His Highness. Maybe he hasn't realized his feelings yet, but you have already become his most special existence. If you are willing to give him some time to find out, This old woman thinks that he will definitely be a very competent and considerate husband, and you will become the happiest person. Wait. How did the topic get so far away? Moreover, it was hard for her to imagine what their married life would be like. Granny Wang, you're talking a little too far. Can we not talk about this topic? She immediately stopped Granny Wang from continuing. If she continued chatting with her, she was afraid that Granny Wang would not be able to hold herself back. Perhaps they would even talk about what to name their children in the future. Moreover, she had already made up her mind to leave, so she didn't want to make a promise that she couldn't keep. Because she hated people who went back on their words the most, she would not allow herself to go back on her words to others. Granny Wang was a little disappointed that she didn't get her promise. However, she thought about it again. Perhaps the young lady was too shy, and she was too straightforward because she was too anxious, so it wasn't appropriate for her to agree. Moreover, she believed that His Highness was such a good person that he would definitely find happiness. Therefore, Wang Pa stopped talking and picked a few interesting stories from Xiao Ho's childhood to chat with her. Only then did Pang Zhijing breathe a sigh of relief. She had finally escaped a calamity. Because on the way, she helped Granny Wang bring some beans to go with the father and son's wine. Before leaving, she saw that he was drinking wine. She mischievously leaned close to his ear and whispered, "You were so angry just now. Were you jealous of Yu Qingxi?" Cough, cough. Xiao Ho choked on a mouthful of wine and coughed miserably. Seeing this, Pang Zhijing immediately slipped away. Otherwise, she would be skinned alive by him later. Xiao Ho coughed until his eyes were hazy with tears. From the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of a certain person's fleeing figure. He secretly decided that when he had time, he would definitely let her taste the taste of regret. Because of what happened just now, Pang Zhijing didn't dare to go out. She was afraid that she would be reprimanded the moment she went out, so she pulled Granny Wang to talk about him. Unknowingly, it was late. Seeing that it was already late at night, Pang Zhijing yawned. Only then did she dare to go out with Granny Wang to see how the two of them were drinking. Originally, she was worried that he would give her the cold shoulder if she went out, but she saw him leaning against the wall and holding his head as if he had fallen asleep. Uncle Wang at the side pointed at Xiao Ho cheerfully and said, "His Highness's alcohol tolerance is too poor today. He drank too quickly. I don't know who he was competing with, but he got drunk all of a sudden. This old man drank even more than him. Look, he's still sober now." Pang Zhijing looked at Uncle Wang, who was dancing and swaying. The corner of her mouth twitched. That's right. Drunk people would always say that they weren't drunk. Then what do we do now? He's so drunk. How are we going to go back? No one had brought any guards or servants with them when they went out today. She originally thought that he was a person with self-control and wouldn't get drunk. Who knew that he was as drunk as mud now? She had a headache. That's easy. We'll rest here tonight. We'll leave tomorrow morning when His Highness sobers up, Granny Wang suggested. Won't that be too much of a bother? Pang Zhijing was a little embarrassed. Granny Wang waved her hand. It's fine. His Highness has stayed overnight before. We still have an empty room here on the right. I'll have to trouble you to bring His Highness there to rest. I'll deal with this drunken old man first. With that, Granny Wang immediately pulled the dancing Uncle Wang into the room. After entering the room, Uncle Wang asked in a daze, "Don't we have another room in our house? Are you lying to me?" Granny Wang asked softly, "Do you want to carry Little Highness?" "Even in my dreams." Uncle Wang stood up straight and roared. Granny Wang covered her ears and exclaimed, "Keep your voice down if you want to. Otherwise, you won't be able to carry him." Uncle Wang immediately quieted down. Like a well-behaved child, he whispered, "Shoo, don't talk. Keep your voice down." Granny Wang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She really didn't know what to do with him. Meanwhile, outside, Pang Zhijing was facing Xiao Ho. How could she drag such a big person? She felt like a tragic girlfriend who had picked up her drunk boyfriend from a roadside stall. She wanted to ask Granny Wang for help. Unfortunately, she never came out after bringing Uncle Wang in. Moreover, she could tell that Granny Wang's legs were not very convenient. It was better for her to rely on herself. She studied it for a while. In the end, she decided to put his hand on her shoulder and help him in. That way, she would not throw him to the ground. It was getting late. She could not delay any longer. She rolled up her sleeves. Just as she put his hand on her shoulder, she felt a gaze staring at her. Slightly stunned, she could not help but look over. She didn't know when Xiao had woken up. His fair skin seemed to be covered with a thin layer of powder. He looked like her favorite peach, extremely attractive. His usually calm eyes seemed to be soaked in water. They were moist and sparkling, so bright that it could burn people. Chapter 12:22. She was almost burned by this pair of eyes. That heat flowed through her blood and reached her left chest. Her heart immediately started thumping. If it wasn't for the heavy rain outside, she would be able to hear her own heartbeat at such a close distance. If he heard it, that would be awkward. She couldn't help but shift her gaze away, intending to let go of his arm and stand up. "Are you pretending to be drunk?" she asked in a bad mood. It wasn't as if he didn't have a record. Last time, he pretended to be drugged to deceive her. This time, he must be teasing her again, causing her to seriously think of several plans to drag him down. Thinking of this, the shyness from earlier immediately turned into slight annoyance, and the fire in her instantly rose several levels. Xiao's arm exerted a little force, and her waist that had just straightened bent down once again. They were even closer to each other, as if her entire body was in his embrace. This kind of ambiguous position made her instantly mature like a crayfish. "Little rascal," he called out softly, rubbing their ears and temples together, with a gentle and intimate address between lovers. The fire that was rising was blown back in an instant. Pang Jijing felt that her heart was about to melt from his voice. It couldn't be helped. She had never had any resistance towards pleasant voices because she was a genuine voice and face fetish. But when she came back to her senses, her face was gloomy. What kind of address was little rascal? She felt as if she had fallen from heaven into a quagmire. She harumphed and said, "Why are you calling me?" Her misty eyes suddenly sharpened, and her tone became solemn and serious. "You're not allowed to go near Yu Qingxi. You're not allowed to talk to her. You're not allowed to rekindle old feelings." After saying no 3 times in a row, Xiao, who had revealed his overbearing nature after getting drunk, finally tilted his head and gave himself to her. He closed his eyes, and there was still a smile on his lips, looking very happy. However, Pang Jijing was currently in a daze. What was going on? Hey, explain yourself." She really wanted to wake him up, but he had already fallen asleep. No matter how she shook him, there was no reaction. "I really want to throw you here," she muttered hatefully. But in the end, she still couldn't bear it and reluctantly helped him up and sent him into the room. He was too tall, and the man's skeleton was placed there. She couldn't even support him, but there was a breath of air in her heart that supported her. She grumbled as she walked. "I can't wait to get as far away from that Yu Qingxi. Who knows if he'll rush over and kill me? He's talking to me, but I don't care. I'd rather talk to the wall than waste my saliva on him. Rekindling old feelings, my ass." The original owner of this body must have been blind to fall in love with such a sanctimonious but vicious person, she muttered to herself. She didn't even realize that every word she said was an explanation and a guarantee to him. It was as if she was a girlfriend declaring her loyalty to her boyfriend. It was a short distance, but it took a lot of effort to half carry and half drag him into the room. As soon as she put him down, she collapsed onto the couch in exhaustion. "That's too much. In the future, when I'm around, I'll definitely not allow you to drink. If you insist on drinking, then I'll hide far away and see what you can do." She didn't dare to threaten him face to face, but now she could properly vent. It was a pity that she really didn't have any strength. She could only rest for a while and continue later. The fierce wind outside had lessened quite a bit, but with the heavy rain pouring down, the stuffy air was immediately swept away and there was a bit more coolness. It was a pity that the sound was too loud. When it fell on the tiles, it made a crackling sound. They both had to rely on shouting to speak, but for some reason, It gave people an incomparably peaceful feeling. Away from the imperial court, away from the struggle, away from the plots and plots, everything seemed to be as ordinary as the days of a commoner's family. She looked at the house. Although it was very old, it still stood tall in this kind of heavy rain. Sometimes she felt that life didn't need to be grand and magnificent, didn't need to eat exotic delicacies, and didn't need silk and satin. As long as there was a house that could shelter you from the wind and rain, and the person you liked lying next to you, you could sit and watch the flowers bloom and wither, and the clouds roll and unfold. She turned over and happened to be facing him. His light eyebrows were like autumn water, and his deep eyes like the sea were covered. His long and curly eyelashes were clearly visible, making people feel that his entire appearance was exquisite. The ends of his eyes were deep and long, and the ends were slightly curved. When she closed her eyes, she realized that he had such a charming side. It was just that he always had a fake smile on his face, so the beautiful ends of his eyes were not revealed. When they quietly faced each other, she couldn't help but imagine his usual appearance on his face. When he smiled, he was confident and elegant. When he was deep in thought, he was as gentle as jade. When he was angry, his eyes were sharp. She couldn't help but feel a little wronged. Why was he so gentle to others? But sometimes he was angry with her, sometimes he criticized her, and sometimes he was cold and ignored her. She didn't provoke him, but he always found trouble with her. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but reach out and poke his face as punishment. She had wanted to do this for a long time. But when she poked him for the first time, wow, it was so soft. Continue, poke, poke, poke. Then, the person in deep sleep seemed to be disturbed. He casually grabbed her naughty finger and wrapped her entire hand in his palm. He frowned slightly and muttered, "Stop it." From his tone, it seemed like he knew that she was the one who was causing trouble. She immediately put away her thoughts and didn't dare to tease him anymore. Who knew if he would remember when he woke up tomorrow? There was nothing to do, and there was only one room. Fortunately, he was asleep, so she could find a random corner to sleep for the night. Anyway, she wasn't a real princess and wasn't that delicate. The cool breeze from outside blew in, bringing with it moisture. Her sleepiness was blown away quite a bit, and unfortunately, she became more and more awake. She thought back to the fruit wine she drank before. It seemed to have the effect of nourishing and beautifying her. She felt warm and comfortable now. When there were no distractions in her mind, she would start to think about life. This was her habit. Her gaze fell on Xiao Ho, and the words that Granny Wang said to her today echoed in her ears. She imagined herself when she was 6 years old. She was being pampered by her parents and acting like a tyrant in the neighborhood. Parents would often bring their children to complain about her. Her parents would always harshly criticize her in front of outsiders, but after they left, they would call her darling and darling. So she had a stark contrast. She felt more and more that he didn't have a happy childhood. There was only danger and hunger. The image of a 5 or 6-year-old child wearing thin clothes, curled up in a corner and looking outside at the university floated in front of her. Her eyes couldn't help but moisten. In the end, she couldn't help but reach out and hug him. She wished that when you were 6 years old, she could accompany you by your side, give you warmth, and not show such a sad and lonely gaze. There were so many helpless things in life. If she could be a step earlier, or a step later, would it be better? Chapter 12:23. She smelled the medicinal fragrance on his body. In the past, she always thought that he was pretending to be sick, so he put effort into his clothes. It was not until tonight that she learned from Nanny Wren that he was sick all over before leaving the cold palace. If it was not for his tenacious perseverance, he would have frozen to death in that winter. After leaving the cold palace, he recuperated for nearly 5 years. He used the strongest medicine and endured the most painful treatment to cure his body. However, even if he was cured, the medicinal fragrance on his body would remain forever. She realized that she did not understand him at all before. He was like Pandora's box. Once she opened it, there would always be wonderful discoveries. She also realized that the more she understood him, the deeper the fetters in her heart. Her feelings for him were also slowly deepening, as if she did not want to leave him. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and opened them again. All good things must come to an end. People who loved each other would not necessarily be together in the end. Not to mention unrequited love. She smiled softly and murmured in a low voice, "Your mother wants me to accompany you, Nanny Rin wants me to accompany you, but you definitely don't want me to accompany you." That bitch warned her in the palace. How could she still have the extravagant hope of staying by his side? "Although I did not promise them, I can reluctantly accompany you for a while before I leave. This way, you will become more and more impatient with me, and when I leave, you won't feel reluctant to part." She was the one who fell in love first, so it was up to her to end this unrequited love. She hugged him tightly and buried her head in his shoulder. Tears slipped from the corner of her eyes. "Perhaps, even I don't know how much I like you." Late at night, the rain fell and the wind blew. One person was asleep, the other was deep in thought. The storm stopped before dawn. Soon, when the sun rose, the dark clouds dissipated, and the sky was clear. It was impossible to tell that the storm had just happened last night. Only the water droplets on the trees, the puddles on the ground, and the empty mountains in the distance could tell. The sun shone in through the window. The sky and earth were washed by water, and the air was moist. The sunlight did not have the usual heat, but was gentle with a hint of freshness. When the light fell on Xiaoho's body, it was slightly ticklish. He reached out to hold his forehead and slowly opened his eyes. After adapting to the light, he frowned slightly and recalled what had happened last night. Just as he was about to get up, he realized that his other hand was being held. He turned his head and saw a furry head lying on the side of the bed, sleeping soundly. He didn't react for a long time. His mind seemed to have gone blank as he stared at her in a daze. Normally, several schemes would form in his mind in the blink of an eye. However, one day, when he woke up in the morning, he saw a woman sleeping peacefully. His mind was not thinking of anything, and he was in a daze for the first time in his life. Only then did he realize that his boots had been taken off and placed under the bed. His coat was also placed beside the bed, and he was covered with a thin blanket. He looked at her deeply, then gently got up and carried her from the chair to the bed. He helped her take off her shoes and covered her with the blanket. Then, he sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her. At this moment, he realized that the corners of her eyes were slightly red, and her nose was also red. He didn't know if it was because of him or some other reason, but it looked especially lovable. His actions were faster than his rationality. He raised his hand and gently rubbed the corner of her eye. The skin that his fingertips touched was so delicate that he couldn't bear to look away. His mind wavered. At this moment, she suddenly lifted the blanket and placed her hand on the blanket unruly. He couldn't help but smile and put her hand back on the blanket. Then, he stood up and walked out of the room neatly dressed. Grandma Wang and Uncle Wang had already woken up. They left Grandma Wang to look after the house while Uncle Wang went out again. When Grandma Wang saw Xiaoho come out, she smiled and said softly, "She's not awake yet?" This question made Xiaoho's ears turn slightly red. It was like the first night of a newlywed couple. Luckily, Xiaoho was good at adjusting his emotions. He nodded calmly. "She probably slept late last night and is still sleeping now." "Then don't wake her up. She must have had a hard time taking care of you alone last night." Grandma Wang spoke up for Pang Zhijing, intentionally or otherwise. Xiaoho didn't notice. His attention was on her words about taking care of him. He couldn't help but turn to look at the room with the swaying curtains. His eyes were filled with surprise and inexplicable emotions that even he didn't notice. Grandma Wang was secretly delighted. As expected, there was something going on between the two of them. When Pang Zhijing woke up, the sun was already high up in the sky. She stared at the bed in a daze. When did she get on the bed? Thinking of this, she suddenly woke up with a start. She clearly remembered that Xiaoho's hand was especially strong last night. She couldn't break free and could only use her leg to hook a small stool over. Then, she sat down and fell asleep. But now, she was properly covered with the blanket. Could it be that she sleepwalked into the bed in the middle of the night? But she never knew that she had such a habit. She was so frightened that she immediately looked around. She didn't see any trace of Xiao. Fortunately, he wasn't here. Otherwise, if the two of them woke up in the same bed at the same time, it would be awkward. She looked down to check her clothes. Fortunately, all the buttons were intact and didn't come loose. It seemed like nothing happened last night. But who helped her take off her shoes and covered her with the blanket? His name flashed across her mind. Pang Jijing couldn't help but tremble. Impossible, how could he be so kind? However, she couldn't conclude the truth from her wild thoughts. Plus, she was thirsty and hungry. She decided to get up and find something to eat first. As soon as she went out, the house was empty. She scratched her head. She didn't know where everyone had gone. But at this time, she heard voices coming from the kitchen. She couldn't help but follow the sound. When she stood by the door, she was stunned by the scene in front of her. That person didn't care about his image. He squatted on the small stool, picked up firewood and put it into the stove. The temperature in the kitchen was so high, and his clothes were soaked with sweat. But he didn't care at all. In fact, he seemed to be enjoying it. Wang Po was the first to notice her. She said cheerfully, "Jijing, you haven't washed up yet, right? There's clean water and cloth in the yard. You can do it yourself." Xiao heard her and turned to look at her. His eyebrows raised slightly, but he didn't say anything and turned back. Strange. He seemed to be holding back his laughter. Was she that funny? Washing up was more important. She went to the yard to get some water. Because of the limited conditions, she could only wash up simply. She would go back and wash up properly. After tidying herself up, she returned to the kitchen. Just as she was about to ask if there was anything she could help with, Wang Po looked at her and laughed. Did something happen? She was now at a loss as to what was going on. Xiao looked up and shook his head with a smile. He waved at her. "Come here." Why should she come here just because he asked her to? She wasn't a husky. But in the end, she couldn't resist Wang Po's laughter. She touched her nose and walked towards him. Chapter 12:24. When she walked in front of him, she found that it was somewhat inappropriate for him to be sitting while she was standing, so she obediently squatted down and raised her head to look at him in confusion. What exactly were they laughing at? She clearly washed her face very seriously. Looking at the little rabbit squatting in front of him with eyes as big as copper bells, Xiao slightly curved his eyes. Then, he freed a hand and untied her long hair from the hairpin. Using the words she usually used to lecture people, sometimes it was hard for him to imagine how a stupid and cute person like her could smoothly and healthily live until now. She could sleep until her hair turned into a nest of straw and still not feel anything. From his actions and the time he stayed, she could guess what kind of ghost was on her head right now. She couldn't help but lower her head in embarrassment. After he finished, he saw a few strands of hair sticking up on her head, so he pressed them down without thinking. Pang Jijing blinked and suddenly exploded, "Xiao, your hand." He actually touched her head with his dark, wooden hand. It was simply unforgivable. At this time, Xiao had already calmly retracted his hand and turned around to continue adding firewood. He didn't care about her furious appearance at all. If the enemy didn't accept the challenge, it was useless for her to stomp her feet on the side. "Forget it, I won't bicker with him." She brushed her hair. Seeing that everyone was busy, she couldn't help but ask Nanny Ren, "Is there anything I can help with?" Nanny Ren was on the side and had been watching the interaction between the two. When she saw it, she felt joy in her heart and showed it on her face. When she heard Pang Jijing's question, she thought for a moment, "Can you help this old woman pick some vegetable leaves?" "That's easy." She rolled up her sleeves, took the basket, and went outside to the courtyard without another word. Hearing the movements in the courtyard, Nanny Ren looked at His Highness, who was controlling the fire, with a smile and pretended to carelessly say, "Your Highness, where did you find this girl? She's kind, lively and cute. This old woman hasn't seen such a naive girl in a long time." Xiao's hand that was holding the branch paused for a moment before he continued to touch the fire. "She fell from a tree." Although these words did not reveal Pang Jijing's identity, it was undeniable that when they first met, she had fallen into his arms. Granny Wren was amused. It seemed that their encounter would be very interesting. What does your highness plan to do with this girl in the future? That's all. In the face of someone who truly cared about his mother, Xiao was a little embarrassed to talk about the marriage between the two of them. If it was something else, Granny Wren might not ask any more, but this was a major event related to his highness's life. There was no elder in the Wangfu who could help him manage it, so she couldn't help but ask until the end. In any case, her old face was not thin. Are you planning to take her into the prince's mansion? Granny Wren continued to ask. Xiao felt a headache coming on. He didn't want to tell her so early, but he was worried that she would ask Pang Jijing. Pang Jijing was usually very shameless, but when it came to this kind of thing, her skin was thinner than anyone else's. She is the princess. This simple and clear sentence not only explained Pang Jijing's identity, but also informed her of her attitude and where she belonged. Granny Wren was pleasantly surprised. Previously, there was a rumor that His Highness had become the prince consort. She and the old man had always complained that the heavens were unfair and that His Highness had suffered since he was young. Now, he was going to become the sacrifice of a marriage alliance. The people of the southern Song country were valiant and the princess was unruly. If His Highness married her, it was like marrying a tigress into the family. It would definitely cause chaos and the family would be uneasy. While she was still worried, she knew that the southern Song princess was none other than the well-behaved and sensible little girl from before. Granny Wren didn't know whether to laugh or cry at those rumors. She wanted to open the door and angrily shout outside that their Wangfei was not an unruly tigress. You people can't eat the grapes and say that the grapes are sour. Originally, she was still thinking about when the two of them would get married. Now that the date of the marriage was set, there was nothing to worry about. Granny Wren felt that her heart, which had been anxious for half of her life, could finally settle down. Although the marriage partner was the princess, Granny Wren was even more satisfied when she saw that the two of them were in love with each other. She couldn't help but sigh, very good, very good. Much better than Mississippi. Xiao's expression tightened when he heard this. If it wasn't for that framing, maybe mother could be together with the person she likes. His mother originally had a childhood sweetheart fiancé. Because the family was framed, the two of them were forced to separate. Later, that young master disappeared after his mother's property was confiscated. Some people said that he was dead, and some said that he was crazy. In short, no one saw him again. Just as the two of them were immersed in their memories and the atmosphere was heavy, Pang Jijing walked in with light steps. It's all washed. Where do you want to put it, Granny Wren? The cheerful voice took away the sad atmosphere. Granny Wren went forward to take the basket and smiled. Girl is so diligent. Encouraged by the elder, Pang Jijing's heart instantly swelled. Her hands itched and she really wanted to do something. Her eyes glanced at the eggs on the ground and her eyes lit up. I'll make Yangzhou fried rice for lunch. Granny Wren readily agreed. Okay. If she didn't know her identity, Granny Wren probably wouldn't let her do it. However, since she knew that she was His Highness' fiancée, Granny Wren had already treated her as one of her own. She wanted to see if there was anything she could teach her. Although Pang Jijing was very happy that Granny Wren had agreed to her request, Pang Jijing had always felt that Granny Wren had been acting strangely ever since she entered the room. She had been looking at her with sparkling eyes as if she was looking at a rare animal. She felt that something was wrong. Perhaps she noticed that Pang Jijing was uncomfortable, so Granny Wren found an excuse to leave and left the space for the young couple. When only the two of them were left in the kitchen, Pang Jijing patted the person beside her and asked suspiciously, Did you say something bad about me to Granny Wren? Nothing. Xiao casually replied. That's strange. Why do I feel that the way she looks at me is so strange? She muttered to herself. Hearing her muttering, Xiao raised his eyebrows and added, Oh, Granny Wren already knows your identity. Pang Jijing was dumbfounded. As expected, it was his fault. Calm down, I won't bicker with this scumbag. After she calmed down, she began to prepare the fried rice. Today, he was responsible for the fire, so she only needed to be responsible for stir-frying. When she was beating the eggs, she caught a glimpse of his exquisite side profile from the corner of her eye as he concentrated on watching the fire. She suddenly felt that the person in front of her wasn't the smooth and slick noble lord, but a down-to-earth, ordinary man. She didn't know why, but she suddenly had the urge to be with him forever. Chapter 12:25. Pang Jijing had seen her father make Yangzhou fried rice. It tasted good and tasted good, but she had never made it herself. This dish was easy to eat and look, so it should be easy to make. That was what Pang Jijing thought. But in practice, it was like this. Xiao Ho, I put the eggshell in. Help me pick it out. Xiao Ho, do you want to add salt or oil first? Xiao Ho, it's burnt. Xiao Ho, pour water on it. Xiao Ho. In the end, the Yangzhou fried rice that was placed on the table was charred black. Xiao Ho was silent. Pang Jijing was silent. Granny Ren looked at the two of them and immediately tried to smooth things over. It's probably Jijing's first time making it, so it's inevitable that there will be problems. It's already very good to be able to cook it. Keep up the good work in the future. Pang Jijing, who was very depressed, looked at Granny Ren with tears in her eyes when she heard her consolation. Really? Her pitiful look really made one's heart ache. Granny Ren was immediately subdued by her cute appearance and nodded repeatedly. Xiao Ho couldn't help but facepalm. It said that a loving mother leads to a wastrel. The situation in front of him was almost the same. Granny Ren took care of the rest of the dishes herself. She chased the two of them out and let them play by themselves. After leaving the kitchen, Xiao Ho thought for a while and took her to the courtyard to wait. Because of the heavy rain last night, the wind was cool and it wasn't very hot today. When they arrived at the courtyard, Pang Jijing realized that there was another world here. Because it was too dark last night, she didn't see it clearly. At this moment, there were many wooden racks set up. Grapevines were entwined all over the racks, and the green leaves were lush. Bunches of green grapes hung down, fluttering in the wind. They were like naughty children swinging on a swing. Looking at this small cluster of green grapes, she felt her teeth ache. Xiao Ho caught a glimpse of her strange and conflicted expression from the corner of his eyes. He explained calmly, "It's not ripe yet. It'll be fully ripe in August or September." He paused for a moment, looked away, and said uncomfortably, "When the time comes, I can bring you to taste it." Hearing this, Pang Jijing's eyes lit up. Looking around, there were groups of them. When the time came, they could pick and eat a bunch. How delightful would that be? She was about to say, "Good, good, good," several times, but suddenly stopped as if someone had hit her mute acupoint. August or September? When the grapes ripened, she might not be here anymore. She couldn't make a promise that she knew she couldn't keep. Her silence made Xiao Ho turn to look at her. Under the shade of the trees, she stood sideways and raised her head slightly. The sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves and shone on her face, shoulders, and body. The halo was too bright, and the expression on her face could not be seen clearly. However, she, who was shrouded in the halo, gave off a faint feeling of sadness. He was slightly stunned and felt an inexplicable tug at his heart. However, at this moment, she suddenly turned her head. With her back facing the sun, she smiled brightly at him. "How about I teach you to recite a tongue twister about grapes?" Xiao Ho did not hear what she said clearly. He only felt that the person in front of him, her eyes, the corners of her eyes, and the corners of her mouth were all shining brighter than the sun. For a moment he could not look away. In the warm summer sun, in the gentle breeze, he heard her clear voice passing through the cool breeze and moving around. "Listen carefully, I'm starting. Green grapes, purple grapes. Green grapes are not as purple grapes. Eat grapes without spitting out the grape skin. Don't eat grapes without spitting out the grape skin. Don't eat grapes without spitting out the grape skin. Eat grapes without spitting out the grape skin first." Actually, this was the only tongue twister she knew. When she participated in the kindergarten competition, she had picked this question and it left a deep impression on her. At this time, she could use it to fool people. Green grapes, purple grapes. Just after she finished showing off, Xiao Ho's low recitation sounded in her ears. He slowly sped up, his enunciation was clear, and his pronunciation was perfect. He was even faster and smoother than her. Pang Jijing's mouth twitched. This was an instant kill. After Xiao Ho finished reciting, he turned to look at her and said, "Interesting. Is there anything else?" Pang Jijing was dumbfounded. She should not have taken it out to show off. "Your Highness, Jijing, it's time to eat." At this moment, Granny Ren's voice saved her. I'm coming." She didn't even look at Xiao Ho as she quickly ran away. Xiao Ho looked at her fleeing figure and was puzzled. The dining table was filled with a rich variety of food. Granny Ren had gone out early in the morning to purchase food, so the meal was very sumptuous. The only thing that was lacking and eye-catching was Pang Jijing's plate of Yangzhou fried rice, because the appearance was really too bad. Pang Jijing secretly reached out and wanted to bring the plate of fried rice in front of her, but at this moment, someone was faster than her. Xiao Ho reached out and scooped a spoonful into his mouth. Just as he was about to bite down, his body stiffened and the corners of his eyes twitched. At this moment, Pang Jijing supported her chin with both hands and stared at him with an expectant expression. She quickly asked, How is it? How is it? It's okay. Xiao Ho, who had previously said that a loving mother would spoil the son, was now also saying that a loving husband would spoil the wife. He was used to lying through his teeth, but he had never felt so courageous before. Xiao Ho was a very picky person. It was already very good to receive such an evaluation from him. She could not help but want to taste it to see how delicious it was. Seeing that she was about to eat, Xiao Ho immediately reached out to stop her. What's wrong? She asked suspiciously. You eat what Granny Ren made. You can leave what you made for me. Xiao Ho placed the bowl of fried rice in front of him and said without changing his expression. She thought that it was because her cooking was too delicious and he was unwilling to share it with others. Pang Jijing nodded with understanding. She waved her hand and said generously, Okay, it's your reward. Xiao Ho let out a sigh of relief. Perhaps even Xiao Ho himself did not realize that he had unknowingly spoiled her. And Granny Wang witnessed this scene as a bystander. She was surprised and happy. His Highness also learned to dote on his wife. It was worthy of celebration. Because Uncle Wang came back rather late, the three of them ate first. At the dining table, Granny Ren was very enthusiastic. She kept putting food in Pang Jijing's bowl as if she was her own daughter. This made Pang Jijing very touched. Seeing Xiao Ho eating the food she made, she was very happy and ate a lot. At this moment, Uncle Wang came back. Under everyone's greetings, he washed his hands and came over to eat. Uncle Wang saw the plate of fried rice at a glance and unceremoniously scooped a mouthful into his mouth. Because his speed was too fast, no one expected it and Granny Wang could not stop him in time. Pang Jijing, on the other hand, was looking forward to being praised. However, Uncle Wang spat out the rice in his mouth. He complained as he gulped down water, Old woman, are you old and dim-sighted? You even fried the eggshell and added so much salt. Are you trying to beat a salt cellar to death? Xiao Ho face-bombed. All his efforts were for naught. Pang Jijing looked at Xiao Ho, dumbstruck. Chapter 12:26. After saying goodbye to Grandma Wang and Uncle Wang, Xiao Ho and Pang Jijing took the wine jug and slowly walked back the way they came. At this time, Pang Jijing's mood was very low. She still hadn't recovered from the failure of the fried rice. Xiao Ho walked a few steps and found that his ears were too quiet. It turned out that little rascal had stopped talking. What? Are you still angry with me? Xiao Ho could not help but laugh. Pang Jijing glared at him resentfully. Why don't you tell the truth? Are you happy making me look bad? Xiao Ho rubbed his eyebrows. Do you think it's fun for me to make you look bad? When she heard this, she thought about it and it didn't seem to be fun. Moreover, he ate a lot of that fried rice by himself. Later on, she tasted it and it was indeed a dark cuisine among dark cuisines. She suddenly lost confidence in her cooking. And for him to be able to eat so much without batting an eyelid, he was simply too strong. If Uncle Wang didn't come back and expose him, he probably would have finished it. She suddenly had a question and immediately jogged in front of him. She stared at him and asked suspiciously, "It was clearly so disgusting. Why did you lie to me and eat it?" Xiao Ho looked at her as if she was an idiot. She actually couldn't think of such an obvious reason. What a blockhead. He shook his head, looking like a child who couldn't be taught. Then he walked around her and walked straight ahead. Just like that, she was completely ignored by him. Pang Jijing was stunned and immediately chased after him. "Hey, are you going to tell me or not? If you don't tell me, I'll keep bothering you." Xiao Ho was annoyed by her tenacity. He stopped and looked at her. "I don't want to discourage you from cooking. Are you satisfied with this reason?" Then, while she was still in a daze, he walked around her again and continued walking. Pang Jijing came back to her senses and chased after him while saying, "Xiao Ho, you're despicable. Don't expect me to cook for you in the future. This princess doesn't do household chores. I won't wash my hands and make soup for you." Xiao Ho didn't even bother with her. As she spoke, she also felt that it was meaningless. In any case, she would not be by his side in the future. Whoever was willing could wash their hands and make soup for him. However, she still had a question in her heart, and her tone became much more serious. "Since you treat Wang Pe and Wang Shu so well, why don't you take them into the Wang Fu to live?" Xiao Ho sighed softly. "A long time ago, I wanted to take them to the prince's estate to retire, but they said that they were already used to their current life and didn't want to change places. I couldn't force them, so I occasionally came to see them." "I understand. It's just like how people don't want to move after living in the same place for a long time. The old people in my hometown worked hard for their children all their lives. In the end, when their children wanted to take them in to enjoy life, none of them were willing. They said that they were more willing to stay in their hometown where they had friends and family and a familiar environment. So, just follow their wishes and visit them often. Don't let them become empty nest old people." She was rather moved because her grandparents were just like that. They had always stayed in the small village and were unwilling to go to the city to live with them. They could only go back to accompany them during festivals. The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener did. Xiao Ho felt that with her status and experience, she shouldn't have such a deep understanding. But he didn't ask directly because he knew that even if he asked, she wouldn't say. Even if she said it, it might not be true. After being together for so long, he already knew what kind of personality she had. "But you don't have to worry. After they get married, they will move into the Wang Fu and accompany you." She had been walking well, but when she heard him say this, she almost tripped over herself. "What did you just say? Say it again?" She started to doubt her ears. Xiao Ho hadn't thought that she would have such a big reaction. Raising a brow, he told her what he had said to Wang Po in the kitchen. "Wang Po feels that she is old and wants to spend more time with us. But I feel that her main reason is to help you gain a foothold in the Wang Fu. She used to be my mother's wet nurse, and at the same time, she was responsible for managing the size of the inner yard. If she is by your side, I will be more assured." Hearing this, she felt slightly guilty. When you secretly prepared your luggage and were about to leave, everyone was planning for you. She suddenly felt that she had let them down. This feeling, it was as if she had done something treacherous. Xiao Ho felt the change in her mood. Thinking of her and Chu Qingyan's plan, he sneered. He didn't care about this matter at all because he didn't believe that she could escape from his grasp. Later, when he thought of his thoughts today, he realized how conceited and stupid he was. Because these roads were relatively secluded and there weren't many people coming and going, plus the two of them were wearing veiled hats, no one could recognize their identity. They would only feel that the man and woman walking from afar, whether it was in appearance or temperament, were so compatible. When they reached the fork in the road, there was a bustling street ahead. Pang Jijing felt that there were passers-by peeking at the two of them everywhere. She couldn't help but feel that walking with him was like following a moving, sparkling planet. Although she usually did things in a high-profile manner, she was still a low-key person. Thus, she had the idea of parting ways with him. Before she could finish speaking, a group of children suddenly ran over, chasing each other. One of them didn't look where he was going and directly bumped into her. She was spun around on the spot and fell to the ground. Seeing this scene, Xiao couldn't get past the group of children to save her. He could only watch as she fell to the ground. Sorry. That child got up from the ground and apologized as he ran away. Pang Jijing sat up from the ground. Her hands rubbed against the rough ground, burning with pain. She frowned as she looked at the group of children running away quickly. The corners of her eyes couldn't help but twitch. This group of naughty children. Xiao walked in front of her and squatted down to her level. How is it? Can you stand up? I'll try. Just as she was about to stand up, one of her ankles couldn't exert any strength and she fell to the ground again. Xiao Su saw her pained expression and immediately lifted her trousers. He found that the old injury seemed to have relapsed and was red and swollen. It really is an incurable disease. Pang Jijing looked disheartened. Xiao thought for a moment, then stuffed the wine flask in his hand into her arms. Then, with his back facing her, he said, "Come up." Pang Jijing looked at the wine flask in her hand, then looked at his shoulders that didn't look broad but were actually very muscular. She hesitated for a moment, then climbed up on all fours. What a joke! She couldn't even walk now, not to mention that there was no one here. Could being reserved feed her or send her home? Xiao Su carried her on his back and walked back. What were you saying just now? He asked. Pang Jijing blinked and played dumb. Did I say anything just now? My memory hasn't been very good recently. I'll tell you when I remember. Xiao revealed an understanding smile. He lifted her up a little and walked home unhurriedly. Chapter 12:27. Xiao carried Pang Jijing on his back as they walked through the bustling streets. When the pedestrians saw the two of them being so intimate, they all thought that they were a young couple and all looked at them with envy. Pang Jijing held the wine pot in one hand and his neck in the other. Because her ankle was in too much pain, all of her attention was on her foot and she did not notice the stares of the people around her. Xiao felt that her breathing was becoming faster and faster, so he guessed that it was because of her injury. There was still a long way to go, and if he found a carriage, he was afraid that his identity would be exposed, so he planned to use chatting to distract her. What color do you like? The pain in her ankle was very bad and her forehead was covered in sweat. When she heard his words that did not make sense, she did not have any extra thoughts to think about it as she casually replied, pink. When the time comes, I can have someone decorate your room in pink. Forget about my room. He was a man, and if his room was filled with this kind of girl's color, it would be suspected of his sexual orientation. Although the two of them would be in the same room in the future, he would allow her to have her own room. She could tell that he was trying to distract her. Pang Jijing was a little moved and did not want to waste his efforts. She tried to ignore the pain and chatted with him. This way, if we quarrel, I can go back to my own room. Isn't this like going back to my mother's home? After she said this, she laughed to herself. Xiao heard this and frowned. If she closed the door to her room when she was angry, based on their interactions, wouldn't she often go back to her mother's home? Therefore, he silently crossed out that room in his heart. He did not mind her changing his room. As long as it was not too excessive, he did not mind. The person who was secretly laughing at this time did not know that because he was worried that she would lock the door, Xiao had already taken away her right to her own room. The housekeeper is in charge of the social activities in the mansion. If you have nothing to do in the future, you can participate. The people in the backyard are relatively simple. Except for the maids and manservants, there is no master. Everyone is responsible for you and me. If you feel bored alone, you can bring the maids to go shopping or make some friends. I won't interfere. In another 20 days it would be the wedding day. Xiao realized that he had a lot of things to tell her. Because she came from the southern blue continent, there were a lot of etiquette here that she didn't understand. Therefore, he was considering whether or not he should find a few teaching mamas from the palace to teach her. Because of the pain in her leg, she didn't want to waste energy talking, so most of the time, he was talking while she listened. In the past, she used to think that he didn't talk much. He either didn't talk, or he talked on the spot. Now, in order to make her happy, he kept looking for topics to talk about along the way. She felt very warm. In all fairness, putting aside his identity and status, he was a very suitable partner for her. But how could she, Pang Zhijing, be able to stay by his side? Moreover, if it weren't for the circumstances, she wouldn't even have the chance to get close to him. She despised herself in her heart. She was lusting after a swan. Hearing her breathing gradually become lighter, Xiao Ho felt relieved. Soon, they turned a corner and Prince Yi's mansion was in front of them. Pang Zhijing inadvertently looked up and saw a familiar plaque. She couldn't help but straighten up. Didn't you send me to the relay station? Why did I come to your mansion? Won't I have to go back later? Her questions poured out like beans pouring out of a barrel. Xiao Ho waited for her to finish before replying, I came to the mansion to apply medicine. She wanted to tell him that the medicine he gave her before hadn't been used up, but she felt that he wasn't too happy and immediately stopped. Observing people's expressions was one of her skills, so she knew under what circumstances Xiao Ho could be provoked and when to stay far away. For example, at this moment, she could only obediently nestle on his back and obey him. In order to avoid being noticed, the two entered through the back door. Along the way, the passing servants saw their lord carrying a girl in and looked curiously. When they realized that the person on his back was Pang Zhijing, they all smiled in understanding. So that's how it is. Xiao Ho directly brought her into his room and placed her on his bed. He poured a cup of water for her and went to get the medicine bottle. To be honest, Xiao Ho was a very attentive person. It could be seen from the way he handed her the water. She held the cup and suddenly became absent-minded. She didn't even notice that he sat down in front of her. Xiao Ho placed her calf on his knee and twisted the cork off the bottle. He pulled up her trousers and applied the medicine to the wound. Then he helped her rub it. It might hurt a little. Bear with it. The first time he rubbed it, it was indeed excruciatingly painful. Her little face turned pale immediately. Xiao Ho looked at her face. Although he couldn't bear it, he didn't reduce his strength. Bitter medicine was better for the illness. It hurts a little. You'll feel better later. She reluctantly nodded. After a while, it really didn't hurt that much. Xiao Ho remembered the doctor's instructions. Because her ankle wasn't treated in time and the medicine was used improperly, it left behind a root cause. If it wasn't treated properly, it would relapse once she twisted it. Thus, he patiently helped her circulate her blood and remove the blood stasis. A serious man was the most charming. Pang Zhijing watched as he lowered his head and carefully rubbed her ankle. Ripples appeared in her heart. There was a question that had been hidden in her heart for a long time. At this time, she couldn't help but ask, Xiao Ho, what is your motivation to live now? In other words, what is supporting you to live until now? Xiao Ho's fingers paused. He looked up at her with a scrutinizing gaze. She looked into his eyes and said word by word, it's hatred. Am I right? As soon as she finished speaking, Xiao Ho's relaxed expression instantly disappeared. He put on his mask again, and his gaze was slightly cold. You want to teach me a lesson? She only said one sentence, but his entire aura changed. He even changed the way he addressed her to Your Highness. She knew that he was already a bit angry because he didn't like people prying into his heart. The smartest thing to do now was to avoid this question, but she felt that she probably didn't have much time or opportunity to bring it up with him. Although she didn't agree when Luo Guren had visited her in her dream, she still had to try. She looked at him at eye level and reached out to put her hand on the back of his other hand. Her gaze was as gentle as water, and her voice was as gentle as possible. Xiao Ho, let go of your hatred and don't take revenge, okay? If you keep living in hatred, your heart will never be at ease. Even if you take your revenge, you won't feel happy in life. You'll only feel more lost because you won't have the motivation to continue. If revenge breeds revenge, will there ever be an end to it? Good will be rewarded with good, and evil will be repaid with evil. It's not that there won't be retribution, it's just not time yet. Those evil people will naturally be dealt with by others. Don't become like them. So, don't let your hatred blind your eyes. When you let go of your hatred, you'll realize that there are many things in this world that are worth cherishing. So, promise me, okay? Chapter 12:28. She wanted to do something for him before she left. But he didn't have to worry about food or clothing, and he didn't lack anything. This was the only thing that was fatal. On the road to revenge, one's heart would be lost, and one's humanity would be lost. She didn't want him to slowly turn into a cold, vengeful machine. So the only thing she could do was to persuade him to give up on revenge. Xiao looked at her expressionlessly. What else do you have to say? Say it all at once. She could feel his coldness, but now that the arrow was already on the bow, she had no choice but to release it. If she didn't say it this time, she probably wouldn't have another chance next time. She tightened her grip and held his hand tightly, using her actions to tell him her determination. Buddha said that there are 8 hardships in life: birth, old age, illness, death, love, separation, resentment, longing, unable to ask, and unable to let go. Now, other than birth, old age, illness, and death, you have all 4. Your mother has already passed away for more than 10 years. You can miss her, but you have to learn to let go. She has already reincarnated, and if you keep holding on to the memories of the past, there will be no place for you to place the new beautiful memories. It will also make her worry and leave uneasy. This is love and separation and unable to let go. Your resentment has been planted since you were 6 years old. Because you had no one to rely on and were powerless when you were young, you could only accumulate power bit by bit, develop your connections, and lay the foundation for your revenge. However, long-term resentment will consume your spiritual power. Moreover, no one can guarantee that these efforts you have made will really help you complete your revenge. In life, the least lacking is accidents. As long as there is a slight mistake, everything will be destroyed. This is what it means to have a long resentment and not be able to get what you want. She had already prepared these words in her heart, so when she said it out, it was very smooth. That was why she didn't stumble under the pressure of his huge gaze. She was the one persuading him, and he was the one being persuaded. But in front of her, it was as if she was the one in the wrong. She pursed her lips and looked up to meet his calm eyes. She gathered her courage and said, "Xiao, can you live a simpler life? With your wealth and status, it's not a problem for you to protect yourself here. Are you done?" Her enthusiasm was dampened by his cold words. She looked at him in a daze, only to see his lips curling into a cold smile. Have you ever experienced the scene of watching the life of your closest family member fade away bit by bit? As long as there was an imperial physician, she would be able to survive. However, no one was willing to pay attention to him. As a prince, he was worse than a beggar and was trampled under the feet of others. Staying alone in the courtyard, eating snowflakes when hungry and drinking snow water when thirsty. Princess, do you know what a mouse tastes like? You might not know this, but when you're hungry, everything is delicious. This was the first time Xiao had mentioned his past. He was so calm that it was as if he was talking about a story that had nothing to do with him. If you have not personally experienced sorrow and despair and survived, you will never have the right to judge the lives of others. Outsiders will never understand the thoughts of those involved. They think that they can see through the situation very clearly. In fact, they only know how to move their lips and express their kind thoughts. That's all. Pang Jijing bit her lips and her body stiffened. When she heard him say this, she suddenly realized that she had made a mistake. And this mistake had just been spoken out by him. Xiao coldly pulled back his hand and then stood up. "Princess, don't think that just because you've been with this king for a while that you want to meddle in this king's matters. You still don't have the right." After saying this, he coldly picked up the medicine bottle and turned to leave without any hesitation. Pang Jijing hugged her knees with a guilty expression. She had only considered the result, but she had never put herself in his shoes. This was the kind of confidence an outsider would have. Sometimes, not only did she not help, she made people hate her. She admitted that she had been too impulsive, but her intentions were good and she was sincerely thinking for him. But he did not appreciate it. As expected, she did not have the right to affect him. To him, she was just an insignificant passerby. Being with him for the past few days made her forget her identity. She was just a chess piece in their plan, and now, she was about to become a useless chess piece. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Auntie Luo, I've already done my best. Forgive me for not being able to do anything. At this time, the steward came in with some people. Princess, Lord has already asked this old servant to arrange a carriage for you to return to the relay station. These 2 servant girls will help you into the carriage. She was being asked to leave so soon? Pang Jijing laughed at herself. Then let's go now. The steward immediately had the servants help her. She could only use her other leg to walk and her injured leg was barely supporting her. The steward escorted her and Pang Jijing was silent the entire way. The steward saw this and was a bit puzzled. He couldn't help but ask, Princess, did you quarrel with Lord? Pang Jijing shook her head. You're thinking too much. The steward saw that her expression wasn't too good and tactfully didn't ask further. When she left the courtyard, she suddenly asked, Where is your lord right now? Xiao Ho heard the footsteps behind him and asked without turning his head, He left. After he finished speaking, there was no answer for a long time. He frowned slightly and turned around. But when he saw who it was, his expression was slightly stunned. However, he quickly adjusted his expression and asked in a flat voice, Why are you here? Pang Jijing was hurt by his coldness. She was silent for a while and lowered her eyes. She tried to make her voice sound normal. I'm here to apologize for what I said just now. Xiao Ho frowned slightly and looked at her. At this time, she plucked up her courage and said seriously, I haven't experienced the past you mentioned, so I can't understand your persistence and decision. That's why I said so many inappropriate things to you. I was too self-righteous and thought that I could judge your life from a bystander's point of view. Don't worry, I won't interfere with your life in the future. I'm sorry. She bowed deeply to him to express her most sincere apology. After saying this, she didn't care if he was listening, what expression he had after hearing it, or what he was thinking. She tiptoed on her injured leg and turned around unsteadily. Then she limped out with some difficulty. She was asking for trouble today. She reaped what she sowed. It was her own wishful thinking. She fiercely scolded herself in her heart. At this time, her feet suddenly flew into the air and her entire body fell into a broad embrace. She widened her eyes and immediately looked up. She saw Xiao Ho pursing his lips and carrying her out of the residence with firm steps. I'll send you out. His voice was very stiff, as if he was still angry, but his actions were very gentle. From this angle, she could only see his tense chin. She couldn't help but lower her eyes as her heart churned like an ocean. It was like a person who had been sentenced to death and suddenly had a reprieve. What should she do? She seemed to like him more and more. Chapter 12:29. Today was supposed to be the day off, but someone from the Imperial Palace came to summon Xiao Su. Chu Qian helped him tidy up his clothes as she asked, Big Ice Cube, His Majesty has been quiet for the past few days. Now that he's looking for you, do you think he wants to talk about us leaving the capital? Xiao Ho paused in the middle of straightening out his sleeves. He muttered to himself for a while before saying, I can't guess Imperial Father's thoughts. If it's about leaving the capital, then it's fine. If it's about something else, then I'm afraid there will be a change in our departure. Originally, based on Imperial Father's attitude at that time, the matter of leaving the capital should have been settled quickly. However, Imperial Father hadn't mentioned it recently. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. Could it be that something had happened? He lowered his eyes and saw the little fellow's distressed expression. He couldn't help but smile. He raised a finger and lightly tapped the space between her brows. No matter what happens, it won't change our intention to leave. Don't think too much about it. Wait for me to come back first. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan could only put away her gloomy mood and nodded. Then go quickly and come back quickly. Who knows, we might even be able to leave the city and send Glutinous Rice Ball to Bai Yutong and the others to reunite. Xiao Ho smiled and rubbed her head. After agreeing, he strode out the door. Just as he guessed, Imperial Father had something to tell him this time and had delayed his previous request. Sichuan Emperor sat behind the desk and solemnly instructed, the wedding procession sent by Nansong has already arrived outside the city. They will enter the city tomorrow. You will still be in charge of patrolling the capital. Be careful of these people and see if there are any malicious schemes. After he finished speaking, he subconsciously looked at his son, who had been unusually silent since he came in to pay his respects. Although he had long been accustomed to his son's coldness, the Sichuan emperor still felt a little uncomfortable. However, it was true that he didn't handle this matter properly. He then explained, "The matter of you leaving the capital can be delayed for now. I have already moved General Li Weiyuan back from the border to take over the position of commander of the 3 armies. When he arrives in Jingdo, you can hand over all the matters at hand to him. At that time, whether you want to stay in the capital or return to your fief, I will agree to both." After saying this, Sichuan emperor felt a little displeased. Every time he was in front of his son, no matter how dignified he was, he would always be overwhelmed by his aura. This was also the reason why he didn't like his son all these years. His aura was too strong. If this aura came from a king, it would be very reasonable. But if it wasn't, it would only make people afraid. Sichuan emperor was such a sharp and proud person that he could not accept being inferior to others. Therefore, he was unwilling to see Xiao Su for many years. Xiao Su didn't know what kind of entanglement and struggle the person in front of him was in, but when he heard that he planned to use Li Weiyuan to take over his position, he was still a little surprised. Although Li Weiyuan's ability wasn't bad and was more than enough to take over the position of commander of the 3 armies, he was one of the few centrist parties in the court. Previously, his father had always used the right prime minister's people. He originally thought that his father would also use the right prime minister's people this time. Unexpectedly, he didn't. Perhaps this Li Weiyuan was one of his father's people. It seemed that his father didn't trust the right prime minister's people very much. Since his father had already made a promise, and it was only a few days' journey from the border to here, he only needed to wait until Li Weiyuan took over, then he could leave. In fact, a few days didn't make much of a difference. After a few thoughts turned in his mind, Xiao Su agreed without hesitation. Hearing his agreement, Sichuan emperor let out a sigh of relief. In reality, Li Weiyuan taking over wasn't the most important thing. At this time, if he randomly found someone to take over, then when Li Weiyuan arrived, it would be the same. But at this moment, he needed time. He still hadn't made a decision about Ranner's matter. Consort Yu had come to find him a few times in the past 2 days, saying that Ranner was still depressed and was so thin that he didn't even look human. He truly loved this son of his. It could be said that he had poured all of his fatherly love into him. He knew what this son of his wanted, but he couldn't immediately agree because he had to weigh the situation. He couldn't stubbornly insist on his own selfish desires. Therefore, during this time, he needed Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan to stay in the capital until he thought of a solution. Thus, the Southern Song wedding procession was only an excuse. Okay, then let's discuss the problem of the city defense. What do you think about the people who caused trouble at the East Gate a few days ago? The people who caused trouble were the sons of 2 ministers in the imperial court. It was originally a personal dispute, but the 2 ministers brought the matter to the throne room and complained to the emperor. Both of them were his own flesh and blood, so he couldn't solve it quickly. There are 2 ways. The first is to pacify them and send an imperial physician to treat them. The second is to punish them all by giving them 50 strokes of the cane each. Xiao Su didn't even need to think before giving 2 answers. Sichuan emperor's eyes lit up. The first method could not only pacify the matter but also show his magnanimity. The second method was to warn others. In the future, the ministers in the imperial court would restrain their children and not cause trouble so easily. This would also prevent them from bothering him the next time it happened. His gaze fell on his calm son in front of him and felt a bit regretful. If it weren't for some other reason, he would have thought that his son was a good seedling to help him rule the country. Unfortunately, while Xiao Su was left in the imperial study to help Sichuan emperor solve the problem, Chu Qingyan was sitting in the courtyard. She was a bit impatient and bored from waiting. Glutinous rice ball was brought to the room by her father to play. Jasper went to the ready-made clothes store to help her get new clothes. As for Xining, she gave her a day off so that she could go play with Jean Xin. Then everyone went out. She was the only one left feeling sorry for herself. When she was bored to death and wanted to find Hualing or Turin to fight and relax, a shadow appeared in her field of vision. She looked at the shadow on the ground and rubbed her chin while studying it. Stand there and don't move. Let me guess who it is. Today, she's wearing a butterfly hairpin, jade earrings that are half a finger long, and a willowy waist. The little beauty Huang Yi, am I right? She turned her head with a smile and saw Huang Yi helplessly looking at her with an amused expression. Little princess consort, is it fun to tease this servant? Chu Qian reached out a finger and shook it. No, 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 you're wrong. It's teasing. Seeing the little princess consort seriously defend herself, Huang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Little princess consort, if the Lord heard this, he would skin this servant alive. Huang Yi's expression made Chu Qian happy. She laughed until she was convulsing. Huang Yi, you're too cute. Teasing you is more fun than teasing anyone else. Seeing her innocent and defenseless little face, Huang Yi couldn't help but tightly grip the tray in her hands. Chapter 12:30. After laughing, Chu Qian propped up her chin with one hand and waved at her with the other. Come, 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 chat with me. Otherwise, I'll be so bored by myself. Huang Yi was stunned for a moment before placing the tray in her hands on the stone table. She said to her, this servant is here to deliver snacks for you. After delivering them, I have to go to the kitchen and can't chat with you. How about this servant find a few people to chat with? Hearing Huang Yi's suggestion, Chu Qian couldn't help rolling her eyes at the sky. Then she reached out and pulled her to sit on the stone chair. Pressing down on her shoulder, she said in a helpless tone, I say, you don't always stay in the kitchen. The weather is so hot and you don't even know how to be lazy. Why are you so honest? Also, we only eat 3 meals a day. You don't have to be so tense all the time. Huang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she heard this. Her tone was helpless, funny, and moved as she said, this servant has lived for so long and has never seen a master who urges a servant to be lazy. I've also never seen a master who dislikes a servant for being too hardworking. Chu Qian waved her hand and said with an indifferent expression, isn't it because I feel sorry for you? Also, I'm a wise master. I let people work for me and not work for me. Huang Yi looked deeply at her. She felt that the person in front of her was kind and gentle. In her entire life, she had never met anyone who treated her better than her. She smiled as she replied, but this servant's only pleasure is to study recipes. Every time I make a new dish and see my masters eat it with satisfaction, this servant will feel a sense of accomplishment. Little princess consort, didn't you say that life is short and we should seize the opportunity to do what we like? How can you deprive this servant of her pleasure? Yo, you've learned to refute me. Not bad, you've improved. Chu Qian laughed loudly. Other than Jasper and Xining, she liked to talk to Huang Yi the most. This was because she wasn't like other people who were afraid of her status and didn't dare to be close to her. Huang Yi was a culinary fanatic. In her world, there was nothing more important than cooking. People who were deeply attached to a hobby like this were the easiest to get along with because their minds were on their hobby and they didn't have any extra thoughts to care about the outside world. It was because of this that they didn't have any thoughts of scheming against others. Living purely and simply, everything was for their hobby. Huang Yi stuck her tongue out. How would this servant dare? Isn't it because little princess consort is making fun of me? Before she entered the King of England's Fu, there were 7 servant girls who were responsible for Big Ice Cube's food and living. However, after she came, 3 of the 7 left because of her. Now, there were only Huang Yi, Elvi, Qing Yi, and Lani left. But because of her, other than Huang Yi, Big Ice Cube didn't need them to interfere in anything. She felt very apologetic and gave other tasks to the 3 of them. Now, they each had their own things to do and it was quite fulfilling. Now that they were all old, she had to think about their lives for them. It would be best if she could settle them down before she left the capital. If she couldn't make it in time, she would go back to Lianqing and slowly help them find a partner. After all, they had followed Big Ice Cube for so many years. They were dutiful and diligent, so she had to be responsible for them. At this time, Huang Yi was in front of her. There was no time like the present. She could start with her. Huang Yi naturally didn't know that the little princess consort who was staring at her like a wolf had a country squire in her heart. Right now, her mind was on the electric heart on the stone table. Chu Qingyan didn't see anything wrong with her. Right now, she was only thinking about how to mention this matter to her. Huang Yi, come, let's talk about bosom friends. Huang Yi didn't understand, please say it. After thinking for a while, she still felt that it was better to ask directly. She didn't want her to give an ambiguous answer. You've been in the Fu for so long. Is there anyone you like, someone you care about? This was too direct. Huang Yi froze on the spot. Little princess consort, what are you saying? Aren't I just worried about the important matters of your lives? I can't just watch you work in the kitchen for the rest of your life and be lovey-dovey with your recipes. Chu Qingyan reached out to touch her forehead. She shook her head and sighed. She was a bit angry that she didn't fight for it. Huang Yi's face turned red. This servant doesn't want to think about important matters of life. This servant wants to stay in the Wang Fu for the rest of my life. Chu Qingyan copied Xiong Yao's way of speaking. Ha ha ha, it's usually like this. I won't marry, I won't marry, I won't listen, I won't listen. But in the end, isn't it still arranged by their parents to marry the right man? Then they love each other and live a happy life? Huang Yi's face turned red from her teasing. She couldn't help lowering her head and stomping her feet. Little princess consort, don't tease this servant. This servant is timid and can't stand being frightened. Chu Qingyan laughed uncontrollably. When she finished laughing, she recovered her serious expression. Huang Yi, you have to be honest with me. You really don't have anyone you like? Huang Yi's mind instantly flashed with Turin's quiet and cold face. She was shocked by herself and kept shaking her head. Chu Qingyan nodded when she saw this and made a decision. Since you don't have anyone you like, then I'll help you choose. You're all orphans and don't have parents to worry about you. Then as your master, I'll reluctantly help you. Huang Yi looked at the little princess who said reluctantly, but was actually smiling so much that her eyes couldn't be seen. Her scalp couldn't help but tighten. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she seriously started to choose people in her mind. Once she decided on something, she would be serious and do her best. At this time, a figure appeared under a tree not far away. Huang Yi's gaze couldn't help but follow it. It was Turin. At this time, there were 2 guards following behind him. He was facing them and she didn't know what he was saying. At this time, a head suddenly came over from beside her and muttered, Turin seems to have just turned 20. He's generous and does things calmly. He's very compatible with your noisy personality. This is called complimenting each other. Huang Yi was shocked. She hurriedly said, Little princess, what are you saying? Chu Qingyan pulled back her head and blinked at her. I'm analyzing a person for you. Look, Turin is the head of His Highness's top secret guards. His position isn't low, right? His salary isn't low, right? He's trustworthy and he's good at working. If you want to move a stove or carry some firewood, just give it to him. Don't you think it's very necessary for your household? Huang Yi's face turned red from her words. Could she really marry Turin Darin? Obtain happiness? At this time, Chu Qingyan's mouth was dry from talking. When she saw the soup she sent over, she couldn't help but reach out and ask, What delicious food did you make for me today? Refreshing and detoxifying bean soup. Huang Yi absent-mindedly replied. When she finished speaking, she instantly looked up and saw that the little princess was about to put the soup into her mouth. Chapter 1231. In a courtyard in the capital. Higashio Motetsu was resting on his bed with his eyes closed. His folding fan was placed over his face, covering his face. He looked very relaxed and at ease. At this moment, Xuanxi Zimo hurriedly ran in. Young palace master, something bad has happened. No one saw how the person on the bed moved, but the folding fan smashed into the person's face with a loud smack. Xuanxi Zimo immediately shut his mouth, picked up the fan on the ground, and walked in quietly. His master, who had been woken up by him, slowly opened his eyes. He frowned slightly and said with a displeased expression, "Do you still remember the consequences of disturbing this young master's sleep?" Higashio Motetsu still looked lazy and charming, but his usually healthy and rosy complexion was now a little pale. His vitality was also much worse than usual. Xuanqizimo recalled how he had been ordered to hold a water jar and do a horse stance under the sun. He shivered all over. Seeing that he had scared him enough, he changed his position and yawned. What happened? Xuanqizimo looked at his master's tired appearance and remembered that he had been sleepy for several days. He was a little worried, but he still talked about business first, because he knew that this matter was extremely important to the young palace master. Just now, when the subordinate returned from the headquarters, I heard the assassin group say that assassin Meiji had mobilized the spies hidden in the King of England's residence to kill Miss Chu. As soon as he finished speaking, the person who had been lying down lazily suddenly stood up. He stepped in front of Xuanqizimo in a single step and grabbed him by the collar. He asked sternly, "When did this happen?" "In the past 2 days." Xuanqizimo was almost unable to breathe because he was being held so tightly. He struggled to say these few words. Higashio Motetsu was stunned. He immediately threw Xuanqizimo aside and quickly walked out the door. "Little girl, you mustn't let anything happen to you." Xuanqizimo panted a few times. Seeing him leave without looking back, he hurriedly followed. "Young palace master, your current body is not suitable for using internal energy." Before he could finish speaking, he had already gathered his internal energy and used his qinggong to quickly leave the courtyard. In the King of England's residence. Seeing that the young consort was about to drink the bean soup, Huang Yi suddenly stood up and knocked the bowl out of the young consort's mouth. Chu Qingyan's face was filled with confusion. Before she could react to what was happening, the bowl of pea soup had already fallen to the ground, spilling its contents all over the floor. The little green beans were also jumping around like mischievous children. As the soup slowly spread in all directions, Chu Qingyan's gaze shifted from the ground to Huang Yi. At this moment, she was still in shock. She was about to ask Huang Yi what had happened and why she suddenly did such a frightening thing when Turin, who had heard the commotion, immediately walked over. He saw the overturned bowl on the ground and then looked at Huang Yi. He then asked his young consort, "Did something happen?" Chu Qingyan saw Huang Yi's subconsciously pale face. She remembered that she had wanted to matchmake the two of them. She could not let Huang Yi leave a bad impression in front of Turin. Thus, she immediately shook her head and said, "It's nothing. I accidentally knocked the bowl over. I'll get someone to clean it up later. If you have something to do, you can go do it first." Huang Yi, who was at the side, looked like someone had pressed her acupoints. She was dumbfounded and motionless as she looked at the young consort who had helped her cover up. Her eyes suddenly reddened. Mu Ling nodded and was about to leave. At this time, a magpie flew down from the tree and chased after the rolling green bean. It picked it up and swallowed it. Then, it continued to search without fear. Suddenly, the magpie let out a mournful cry. Then, it fell stiffly to the ground, its 4 feet in the air, its entire body stiff. This tragic cry made the 3 people's hearts tremble. Turin immediately strode over and bent down to examine the magpie. Chu Qingyan looked at him and saw his brows furrow. He pulled out a long sword and placed it on Huang Yi's neck, looking at her with a slightly cold gaze. This unforeseen event made Chu Qingyan blank. Although she had already sensed it, she suddenly did not want to delve into it. She could not help but protect Huang Yi. "Turin, what are you doing?" Turin turned to her and said, "That magpie is dead." The magpie that ate the green bean was dead. If the bean soup had not been knocked over and she had drunk it, the one lying on the ground would not be the magpie, but her. She looked at Huang Yi in shock and said in disbelief, "What exactly is going on?" At this time, Huang Yi stood there in a daze. Her head was lowered, and her long hair fell on both sides of her cheeks. No one could see her current expression. Seeing her like this, Turin's eyes moved and he closed them slightly. When he opened them again, he had already returned to his usual calm and composed appearance. His fingers exerted force and pressed the long sword down, forcing her to raise her head. "What's in this soup?" Huang Yi slowly raised her head and looked at him with red eyes that were filled with despair. Turin's fingers trembled under her gaze, but he still looked back at her coldly. Huang Yi replied like a walking corpse, "The ingredients are green beans and rock sugar, but I added 7 steps powder in it." 7 steps powder, as the name implied, after eating it, one would stop breathing and die after taking 7 steps. Chu Qingyan had heard of this poison before and could not immediately accept it. She stared at her in a daze. Turin's expression instantly darkened. He asked sternly, "Why did you do this? Who ordered you to do this?" Huang Yi closed her mouth tightly and did not answer. Just as Turin was about to call for people to take her away, Huang Yi suddenly knelt down in Chu Qingyan's direction. From the moment the bowl fell to the ground, she did not dare to look at the young princess consort. Now that the matter had been exposed, she had nothing to hide. Chu Qingyan watched as she knelt down with a thud. The sound of her knees hitting the ground was exceptionally clear in the quiet courtyard and made her heart tremble. "Huang Yi, what are you doing? Stand up." Huang Yi shook her head. She raised her head to look at her. Her soulless eyes regained their luster and she said with red eyes, "Young princess consort, this servant has wronged you. This servant has betrayed your trust. This servant deserves 10,000 deaths. Hit this servant, scold this servant. Even if you kill this servant will have no complaints." Seeing Huang Yi like this, Chu Qingyan's heart clenched. She held onto the stone table and looked at Huang Yi's eyes filled with guilt and self-blame. She quickly asked, "Huang Yi, tell me, did someone force you? Tell me who threatened you and I'll help you vent." Meeting the young princess consort's hopeful eyes, Huang Yi's heart ached. Even at this time, the young princess consort was still willing to believe her and was still willing to stand by her side. She forced back the tears in her eyes and lowered her head. She did not have the face to look at this person who trusted her so much. She gritted her teeth and slowly shook her head. "No one forced me. I was just following orders." Chapter 1232. Chu Qingyan's body swayed. She found it hard to believe that the person she had treated with sincerity would one day turn hostile and give her arsenic. Huang Yi knelt there with her head bowed. It was as if she could not feel her surroundings. Her entire body was immersed in the darkness. Her voice became light, as if she had sunk into her own memories. "When this servant was 3 years old, I was taken in by the organization. After a few years of training, this servant was arranged to be sent to the Wangfu. That feeling was like being exiled and abandoned. No one told this servant what the mission was or what to do. This servant just obediently stayed in the Wangfu. At the beginning, this servant felt that there was no problem. But after getting along well with the people in the Wangfu, I gradually forgot that I was just an informant. Every day I lived without worry. But slowly, every night, this servant starts to feel afraid. Once I completely integrate into the life of the prince's mansion, if this servant's identity is exposed in the future, what kind of eyes will the people who live with this servant use to look at this servant?" Later, I gradually avoided everyone. I did not speak much with them. This way, even if something happened in the future, I would not feel restrained. Chu Qingyan listened to her words and could not help but look at her. She seriously listened to her narration. Her expression was also affected by her words. Turin put away his long sword and looked at her with a deep gaze. Then, this servant focused on studying recipes. Because making delicious food could give this servant a sense of satisfaction and security, it could let this servant feel her value in the eyes of others. The kitchen was this servant's 1 mu 3 mu of land. Thus, this servant freely expressed her happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy in the kitchen. I deceived myself, hypnotized myself, and comforted myself. No one could step in here, and no one could affect this servant. No one even knew this servant's identity. Thus, this servant continued to deceive myself and others like this. I also thought that this servant could continue to live like this. Huang Yi's voice suddenly rose from its previous low voice. However, the appearance of a person changed the servant's thoughts and even changed the servant's life for those few years. Her words made Chu Qingyan lean forward involuntarily. She asked softly and gently, "Who is it?" Huang Yi raised her head and looked at her with teary eyes. "It's you, little princess consort." These words made Chu Qingyan completely stunned on the spot. For a moment she also forgot to react. "This servant thought that you were just a passing traveler in my life, but you changed this servant. You are like the sun in the sky, warm and gentle. You are also like the moon at night, loving and kind. You are like the light that is everywhere, enveloping this servant and devouring the darkness in this servant's heart little by little." Later, this servant realized that the people in the organization taught this servant all the survival skills, but they didn't teach me what feelings are, what treasures are, and what friends are. The sadness in Huang Yi's eyes was swept away. It was as if the sun had broken through the dark clouds and suddenly shone out, bringing with it the freshness and joy after the rain. "However, little princess consort, you were like a bright light that quickly shone into this servant's life. You taught this servant that people of different statuses can also become friends. Between people, not only can they trust each other, they can also support each other. So this servant isn't that bad. This servant can also have friends." Chu Qingyan slowly digested her words. She didn't think that she had so many secrets in her heart. She had always thought that she was lively and cheerful. Her smile was sweeter than anyone else's and that she was a carefree young girl. However, she now had a whole new level of respect for her. It turned out that the happier a person smiled, the more likely they were to have a wound in their heart. She couldn't help reaching out and gently stroking Huang Yi's head. "You're very good. I always thought that you were pure and kind. You are a good girl." She didn't think that after she had done something wrong, little princess consort was still willing to speak to her so gently. The tears in her eyes couldn't help but flow down. This servant had lived peacefully for more than 10 years. "I thought that the organization had already forgotten about the existence of a spy, so I didn't reject the love I had for you. I also thought that you were the person closest to this servant. When you said that you would take this servant with you when you left Jing City, this servant was very happy. I thought that this way I could cook for you for a lifetime and not leave you. I thought that this servant could drag out an ignoble existence like this for the rest of my life, but..." She sobbed. "But when this servant was filled with hope and prepared to leave with you, the organization suddenly remembered this servant, an abandoned spy, and gave this servant a thunderous mission. When I first entered the organization, I swore to be loyal to them until death. This servant couldn't go against my original oath. These past few days, this servant has been suffering from inner torment." When she said this, Huang Yi bent down and kowtowed to her. "Little princess consort, this servant knows that no matter what I say, it won't change the fact that this servant poisoned you. This servant has let you down, let down your trust in this servant. Sorry." Chu Qingyan immediately crouched down and took the sobbing Huang Yi into her arms. She said in a pitiful voice, "Don't say any more, I don't blame you. Don't blame yourself. It's fine if you did something wrong, as long as you changed at the last moment. Didn't you stop me just now? Otherwise, I would have gone down to drink tea with the King of Hell. So you've already done very well. Don't be sad anymore. No, this servant poisoned you. This is an unforgivable crime. Even if you forgive this servant doesn't have the face to face you." Huang Yi shook her head in despair in her arms. "What nonsense are you saying?" Chu Qingyan detected that there was something wrong with her words. Just as she was about to pull her out of her arms to question her, when her hand touched her hand, she felt an inexplicable coldness. Black blood slowly seeped out of the corner of Huang Yi's mouth and her entire face quickly turned pale. Huang Yi, what's wrong? Don't scare me." Chu Qingyan hugged her body that had fallen to the side and cried out in panic. The silent Turin on the side immediately crouched down when he saw this. He flipped her wrist and checked her pulse. In the end, his face froze and he shook his head at the little princess consort in a daze. "The poison has entered the lungs, no medicine can cure it." "No, nothing will happen to Huang Yi. Turin, go find a doctor." Chu Qingyan immediately cried out. She tightly hugged Huang Yi and begged him. At this time, a hand grabbed her hand and gently pulled. She felt it and lowered her head to look at the person in her arms. Huang Yi smiled weakly. Her voice was very soft, as if it would scatter if the wind blew. She said, "Little princess consort, there's no need. There's no cure for this poison. The organization gave this servant a second life. This servant will return this life to them and we don't owe each other anything. At the same time, I'll use my death to atone for my sins. I have no way to repay your trust." Chapter 12:33. Huang Yi coughed a few times and more blood flowed out. She struggled to suppress her voice and slowly said, "Little princess consort, before meeting you, this servant was like a walking corpse. After meeting you, this servant realized that there are still many things in this world worth cherishing. This servant doesn't regret entering the prince's mansion and meeting you and Lord." After saying this, Huang Yi slowly turned to look at Turin and smiled slightly. "I also don't regret meeting you." Turin was stunned, and his heart felt like it had been hit hard by something. Under the peach blossom branches, I was admiring the flowers, and when I looked up, I saw you dancing with a sword. Pink petals fell with the wind, dancing behind you. The peach blossoms were as beautiful as a painting, but you were more eye-catching than the peach blossoms. You noticed something, so you stopped and looked back at me with a frown. I was afraid you would laugh at me, so I turned to leave, but I accidentally stepped on a stone and fell to the ground. I was extremely vexed in my heart. Every time I was in front of you, I was embarrassed. When I was about to stand up, a hand appeared in front of me. I looked up, and you were standing in front of me with your hand outstretched. Although you were as cold as usual, I saw the silly look in your eyes. After I got up, I was very embarrassed. While thanking you, I took out a packet of freshly made pastries from my bosom. This is a thank you gift. But when I opened it, the pastry was already squashed by me. I stood there for a moment, not knowing what to do. However, you calmly took the pastry from my hand and told me to go back early, because it was going to rain soon. I looked back 3 times as I walked, and when I saw you staring at the pastry, I thought you might be thinking about how to eat it. I'm sorry that every time I let you see my most embarrassing side. No matter if it was the first time we met, or the last moment. But thank you for letting my gloomy life have a beacon to look up to, so that I won't muddle through this short life without any expectations. I hope that my appearance didn't disturb you, and I hope that my departure didn't cause you any trouble. So goodbye, my short life." After saying this, she closed her eyes. Fragments of the past flashed in front of her eyes, scene by scene, and she gradually lost her strength. Then, the memories disappeared little by little, and darkness rushed in until her eyes were swallowed. Although her face was pale, her smile was serene. Chu Qingyan looked at Huang Yi, who was no longer breathing. Her hands trembled uncontrollably as she shook Huang Yi's shoulders and said softly, "Huang Yi, are you asleep? Don't scare me. I'm not angry with you. I don't blame you. You can't abandon us like this. If you're not here, who's going to cook for us? Who would ask me to taste a new dish when they were researching it? Who would boil medicine for me when I'm feeling unwell? Father likes to eat the meat dishes you make the most, and I like sweet and sour the most. Mother said that the vegetarian dishes you make are very delicious. You are so amazing, and you have a talent in cooking that others can only envy. You are so dazzling and worthy of being proud of. Why did you give up on yourself so easily? With me around, no one will force you to do things you don't like? Did you hear that? I won't allow you to leave. You're not allowed to," she said so much, but the person in her arms didn't react at all. She couldn't help but lie on her body and cry bitterly. Turin stood there blankly, his mind blank. He looked at the lifeless person, and her past frowns and smiles suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. Sometimes she would look up and smile, sometimes she would awkwardly pretend to smile, and sometimes she would mischievously sneak a smile. The details that he had never noticed before were so clear at this moment. It was so clear that it was as if she was still in front of his eyes, handing him pastries and saying that he would be hungry after patrolling every day. She would put it in his sleeve, and when he was hungry, he could take it out to fill his stomach. It turned out that losing a person could be so fast. It was so fast that before you could reach out your hand, she would already be gone. In the future, who would stand under the tree and secretly give him pastries? In the future, who would reveal an innocent face after being caught peeping at him? In the future, who would smile and say that they didn't regret meeting him? For the first time in so many years, he tasted the taste of heartache. It turned out that this was the feeling of heartache. Higashio Motetsu, who hurried over, saw such a scene. She hugged the servant girl and cried uncontrollably. It was as if the entire world had darkened. He clutched his chest, feeling a throbbing pain as he looked at her inconsolable appearance. I said that I would protect you well and not let you be sad, but everything that happened was either caused by me or related to me. Now, I don't know how to face you. Thinking back to the words he had said to her at Hugwa Temple, he couldn't help but laugh at himself. He was indeed too conceited. Xuanqi Zimo followed his master with difficulty. When he stood beside him and saw this scene, he couldn't help but turn his head to sigh at his master's good fortune that he was fine. However, he saw that blood was dripping from the corner of his master's mouth. He cried out in alarm, "Master, you!" Higashio Motetsu frowned and wiped the corner of his mouth. He said indifferently, "It's nothing. Let's go back." With that, he turned around and jumped down from the wall. Xuanqi Zimo took one last look at the courtyard, then quickly followed. "Master, don't you want to see Miss Chu?" "There's no need. Then this subordinate will find a doctor for you." "Your injury can't be delayed any longer. Enough nonsense. Let's go back." Before he left, Higashio Motetsu looked back at the high wall. An indescribable emotion flashed across his eyes. Finally, he resolutely left. When Xiao Su returned to the prince's residence, he heard about the incident. When he arrived at the courtyard, he immediately saw Father Chu squatting under a tree. Father Chu raised his head at the sound of his voice. His eyes were red and moist as he looked at him. He pursed his lips and sobbed, "Son-in-law Huang Yi is dead." Then he saw Father Chu squatting there and crying like a child. Xiao Su walked over and handed him a handkerchief. "My condolences." Father Chu waved his hand as he cried. "Son-in-law, don't worry about me. Go and see Kai Kai." He entered the little fellow's room. Sure enough, she was leaning against the window. Her eyes were as red as a rabbit's, and she was in a daze. She didn't even notice that he had entered. Chu Qingyan felt a broad palm fall on the top of her head. She didn't even raise her head as she turned around and hugged his waist, burying her face in his chest. "Big Ice Cube, my heart hurts so much." As she spoke, her tears flowed down again. Xiao Su gently patted her back, silently comforting her. He knew that it was useless to say anything at this time. It was better to let her vent. Why must there be so many hardships in life? Why must there be so many deaths? Don't they always say that the heavens have eyes? Then why can't the heavens see such a good girl like Huang Yi and take her life so easily? Xiao Su sighed softly. Actually, the heavens don't have eyes most of the time. Hearing this, the person in his arms cried even harder. Chapter 12:34. He knew that other than the two servant girls by her side, she had the best relationship with Huang Yi in the Wangfu. It was unavoidable for her to be sad. He softly comforted, "Perhaps for Huang Yi, leaving is the best choice for her." She raised her head and looked at him with teary eyes. Because she cannot forgive herself. To live, it is hard to balance gratitude and righteousness, so she chose freedom. Saying this, Xiao Su gently stroked her long hair. He softly sighed. She is a good girl who dares to love, hate, and take responsibility. It's just fate that makes fools of people. She heavily nodded in his embrace. After today's events, she was in a very bad mood. She didn't want to move in his embrace. Like this, Xiao Su sat with her until the sun set. Evening. Xining came in with food. Seeing the two snuggling together, she didn't dare disturb them and immediately left. Xiao Su heard the sound and lowered his head to pat the sleeping person in his embrace. He softly said, "Get up and eat something. You didn't eat anything for lunch." Although she didn't have an appetite, she knew that sadness was one thing. If she didn't eat, the big ice cube would not easily agree. She reluctantly nodded and followed him to the table. Xiao Su put the chopsticks in her hand and helped her pick up some food. He pushed the bowl in front of her and indicated for her to eat quickly. She didn't want to eat at all, but she didn't want to brush away the big ice cube's good intentions and make him worry. So she lowered her head to eat. When the food entered her mouth, her tears fell down without warning. This was not the taste that she usually ate. She was familiar with every taste that Huang Yi made. Now that she suddenly tasted this unfamiliar taste, she thought that in the future, she would never be able to eat the food that she made. In the future, she would never be able to see this person again. The uncontrollable sadness in her heart flowed like a river. Xiao Ho gave a low sigh. He reached out to wipe her tears and his heart was filled with pity. The separation of life and death could not be comforted with words. He could only stay with her and wait for time to wear away the pain. Hualing couldn't find Turin outside and felt a bit strange. "Wood Spirit, have you seen Turin? Why haven't I seen him all afternoon?" Mu Ling was studying the key seal in her hand. When she heard his question, she didn't even raise her head as she replied, "She went to deliver it to someone." "Give it away? Who are you giving it to?" Hualing, who hadn't been in the palace all day, had just returned. He didn't know what had happened, so he was a bit confused. "A girl." Wood Spirit's hand paused, a trace of regret on her face. On a jasper green mountain, Turin sat on the ground, holding the lifeless Huang Yi in his arms. He looked at her with a lonely expression. "Huang Yi, you're too silly. If you have any problems, you can tell us. Everyone will help you." You shouldn't walk into a dead end alone. After saying that, he smiled bitterly. Unfortunately, it's too late for that. He raised his hand to push her hair behind her head and then softly said, "Next time when you're reincarnated, open your eyes a bit wider and enter a good family. Don't suffer this kind of hardship. It's better to be poor than to wander around and not have parents to love you." After saying this, he reluctantly picked her up and placed her in the coffin. Then he placed the jade pendant he always carried between her hands and slowly closed the coffin lid. The black shadow slowly covered her waist, her shoulders, her face, her hair, until nothing could be seen. With a heavy sound, a board, separated by yin and yang. He buried her with his own hands. He took out a dagger from his sleeve and carved her name on the tombstone stroke by stroke. His expression was serious, as if he could see the intersection between the two of them with every stroke. Here, the blue sky was blue, the white clouds were drifting, the mountains were clear, the water was clear, and the clouds lingered. It was a very good place to go. "If there is a chance, I will come and see you." Turin looked at the grave and was silent for a bit. Then he turned around and slowly walked down the mountain. The sun set in the west, and the afterglow shone on his path home. However, there was no one waiting for him on this path home. Every step he took was very heavy. The tears in his eyes were dried by the mountain wind and could no longer be seen. A man of iron was tender, and his feelings were deeper and more sincere. At the relay station, Pang Zhijing looked at the bowl of black stuff in front of her and swallowed. Then she turned to Lu and confirmed again, "Do you really want to drink it today?" Lu nodded. "This servant is very sure." "No way?" Pang Zhijing immediately leaned on the table. She said with a face full of resentment, "I'm not sick. Why do I have to drink this medicine every day? Tell me, is Xiao Ho trying to poison me to death?" Lu hurriedly said, "Princess, you can't say such things. This is what Lord Yi told this servant to make for you every day. Moreover, haven't you been drinking it for a long time? Just bear with it and don't bargain. Even if you bargain, this servant can only give you 10 plums at most. Lord Yi said that you can't eat too many snacks. Otherwise, your stomach will feel uncomfortable at night." After Lu finished speaking, she felt her master's dark gaze. She felt her scalp tighten and asked, "Princess, Why are you looking at this servant like this? Pang Zhijing pinched her chin and questioned, Lu, are you my servant or Xiao Ho's servant? Why do you listen to him so much? Lu said matter-of-factly, when you and Lord E get married, Lord E will also be this servant's master. Moreover, Lord E does everything for your own good. Of course, this servant will listen to him. Just as she finished speaking, U's head was hit by a chestnut. She covered her head and looked at her princess innocently. You're not even married yet and you're already siding with an outsider. What will happen when you get married? Pang Zhijing snorted. From today onwards, I won't drink this anymore. Whoever wants to drink it can drink it. I've been drinking it for a month or two. If I'm not sick, I'll be sick from drinking it. Take it away. Lu saw that she was suddenly angry today and was very puzzled. However, she could only take the bowl away. Pang Zhijing pinched a plum and threw it into her mouth. Then she thought in a fit of pique that since she wasn't sick, it didn't matter if she didn't drink it. Thus, for the past 2 days, she stopped drinking this strange medicine. Ever since that day when they had a disagreement and a cold war broke out, she didn't look for him and he didn't come to the relay station. The two of them tacitly ignored each other. She didn't know what Xiao Ho was busy with these 2 days, but she couldn't bring herself to look for him. Thus, she waited quietly at the relay station for news from Qingyan. There should be progress on the key in the next 2 days. After 2 days of not drinking the medicine, she was eating dinner when she suddenly felt that her vision was a little blurry. She immediately put down her chopsticks and held her forehead. Lu was serving her at the side. When she saw this, she immediately asked, Princess, what's wrong? Pang Zhijing shook her head and said weakly, I can't see clearly all of a sudden and my head is a little dizzy. Oh no, I'm going to faint. As soon as she finished speaking, she collapsed on the table. Lu was so frightened that she immediately called out to her, Princess, wake up. What should we do? Right, go look for Lord E. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.